Good evening, everyone. I am Trouffman, is a Simonet from OverClocking-TV, and tonight we are here in Russia for the Performance Matters here, the Multicore Madness Moscow. So that's the MMM, the PM night. We are here in Moscow. We are at the HWBOT World Tour just before, and tonight gonna be an awesome night for all of you guys. We have 3 top overclockers, we have 2 awesome guests, we have a large amount of cores that are available to be overclocked. There's a lot of liquid nitrogen and a lot of people in the room just outside. Tonight we're gonna have the 14 core, 16 core and 18 core from Intel on the Core X series, so that's gonna be the Core i9. But before going too much in details, let's welcome our 2 guests for tonight. So that will be Buildzoid and Houston. Hey guys, what's up?
Hello.
Oh, that was quite synchronized. Well done, well done. So we wanted to have you 2 guys on the live for one specific reasons. You guys are experts, and you guys know exactly what we'll be talking about tonight. We're gonna have 2 hours, a little bit more than 2 hours and a half tonight to discuss all the details about the 14, 16, and 18 core CPUs from Intel. Buildzoid, you are here because you are an enthusiast. You are an overclocker. You are someone that do a lot of things with the hardware, usually modifying it. So what do you expect to see tonight at this Performance Matters here, Multicore Madness Moscow?
So, I mean, we are looking at some of the highest core counts, like some of the highest core count CPUs you can get today. So, you know, just really high scores. There's not really much else to expect at this point.
Well, so basically you want scores to be broken, maybe records. That's quite high because the CPU went actually on the market just a few days ago. So there's already some very high score for these 3 CPUs that we're going to get into details in the next few hours and minutes, basically. Houston, you were here with us tonight because you are a builder and broadcaster at Puget System, and you build this kind of huge, powerful, high core count CPUs machine. So what do you expect to see from tonight?
Actually, this will be really interesting to me because my work doesn't really involve a lot of overclocking or very minimal overclocking. So I'm really excited to see the extreme end of this kind of thing.
Perfect. For tonight, we're gonna have 3 big overclockers. That's gonna be Wizerty from France, BenchBros from Germany, and Smoke from Russia. We'll dive into each of them in the next few minutes. We will have the screen available for that. So let's cue back in on exactly what are we doing here tonight. So this is the Performance Matters event. Basically, the Multicore Madness Moscow event is focused on 3 main CPUs. That's going to be the 7940X, so the Core X i9 7940X CPUs. That's going to be 14 core and 28 thread. Then we're going to have the 16 core, which is the 7960X, and finally the 18 core, which will be the 7980XE. Each of these CPU is in the hand of some of the top overclockers from Europe. And tonight, if you have any questions, of course, let them flow on the live chat. We're here for that. We're here to witness what can be done with these high core count CPUs. That's cool. I mean, let's get a little bit into the details about this CPU. Not too much, but just for everyone to know, that's the first time we have an 18-core CPU on the market for the consumer segment. Houston, for you, this is the kind of system you usually see inside servers. So that's the first time we have that on the consumer market. What do you think about having this kind of CPU on the consumer market now?
I think it'll be really good for kind of the smaller time CPU rendering, like Cinema 4D and things like that. It'll be interesting to see what can be done with just one person now without having to have like the heavy iron racks and things.
So are you going to build yourself a big setup with this instead of using a server part?
Maybe sometime in the future. Probably not right away. I'd like to see just how it works. Some of our testing out of labs first.
Okay, so indeed, actually, just to go back on the labs that you were talking about, at your work you have labs and you have like a lot of testing, and you test a different kind of workload as well. What did you saw at the first time when you saw that these 14, 16, and 18 core CPUs from Intel popping up?
Actually, we saw. I'm actually just looking at some of the results from Cinema 4D right now, and as these newer processors are actually really on par with some of our dual Xeon workstations that we build currently, and so it's really amazing to see some of these scores that are really on par with what used to be 2 processors.
Well, tonight there's going to be on one processor and one package, and actually one die as well. So there's going to be one specific part of the CPU. Thank you, Houston. Buildzoid, as an overclocker point of view, what do you expect from these high core count CPU except big scores?
Well,
bigger scores?
Well, not. I'm kind of looking at it as like, depending on what kind of overclocking you're doing, obviously. I see these as having a great potential for sort of 3D benchmarks, which, you know, the 3D marks have always been a very sort of, they are meant to be a sort of full system benchmark, so they do take the CPU into account, and when you're aiming for the top scores, having a 14 core or a 16 core or an 18 core taking care of the physics workload of a 3D mark benchmark, it just helps the overall score so much that I'm really excited to see how well these compare to the previous top CPU for sort of 3D benchmarking. In the 2D space, we've not like the scene for 14 core, 16 core, 18 core benchmarking it's not really a scene, because until now we haven't had unlocked 14 core and 16 core and 18 core CPUs, but you know, it's just, so they're really like, it's hard to compare when in the past it was all Xeons, which were limited to whatever multiplier they came with from the factory.
And that's definitely something we have here tonight. The 3 CPUs that the top overclocker will be overclocking tonight are all unlocked. So that's the Core X series. So it's basically, that's very good for us. We can use that on the liquid nitrogen as well, which is very good. And I mean, high core counts, huge scores, liquid nitrogen. Well, I think that the best way for you guys to witness that is to actually see what's going on in the venue with Wizerty, BenchBros, and Smoke being actually overclocking with LN2, the latest CPU from Intel, the Core X i9-7940X, 7960X, and the 7980XE. Oh, okay, I guess we missed the camera for the static in the venue. Oh well, that's okay. Let's continue talking about the CPU, guys. So if we compare that with the previous generation, the 6950X, that is the 10 core CPU, how do you expect the 14, 16, and 18 core comparing to that? Because there's like 4, 6, and 8 cores, but like the fabric is different as well.
Yeah. So what we've seen so far from benchmarks is that the 6950X has a small advantage for a given clock in single-threaded workloads, right? Because that was on the old ring architecture, whereas the new CPUs use the mesh architecture, and the mesh architecture is optimized for a lot more cores, but it does trade a little bit of latency. And so for single-threaded workloads, the 6950X actually has an advantage up until skylake-x completely just destroys it with the fact that skylake-x is clocking significantly higher than any 6950X ever did. Those CPUs were regularly topping out for benchmarks. Like, you didn't really see chips going up above 5.5 gigahertz, and we've already seen the 12 core, the 14 core, the 16 core, 18 core. We've seen these CPUs approach 6 gigahertz, which is way higher than any 6950X ever did. And overall, at those kinds of frequencies, the fact that the 6950X is a slight bit better in single-threaded performance for a given clock is just completely irrelevant. So, and then of course the core count, it's just like, that's not a contest at that point, right? So
right.
Guys, I just got information that actually there's a presentation going on in the venue, so we're just gonna have to tune in a little bit later on that specifically. But so we have the 7950X that was 10 core last year. We have a complete new range from the Core X and the old skylake-x series, which is quite impressive. Houston, as we said just before, but what did you expect, especially from this one package thing? Because you're the one that used to build servers on dual socket platform as well.
Correct. I'm really interested to see just how the scores will compare. I'm just kind of scrubbing through some of our results from the past, and so I want to see how it matches up with these dual processor results.
Okay, and for the people that I've been asking on the different channels, tonight we'll be focusing on 3 different benchmarks. That's going to be the maximum frequency with all core enabled on CPU Z, and we're going to have XTU score, so Intel Extreme Tuning Utility, which is the software made by Intel in the work with HWBOT to have an all-in-one software where you can tune in the system, overclock, and benchmark as well. So I can't wait to see the big scores. I know some of them are online, but I guess tonight we're gonna have some very, very interesting one, especially with the 18-core CPU. And the third benchmark gonna be Cinebench R11.5. So guys, what did you I mean, Buildzoid, you do bench quite a lot. Did you do bench Cinebench 11.5 quite often?
Yeah, Cinebench 11.5 is probably one of my favorite benchmarks. It's one I've benched a lot, and usually it's one of the first tests I start with, just because it is it's not super heavy, but it is a very, very easy to do benchmark compared to the rest of the same multi-core benchmarks that you can get out there. So it's rather simple, it's very easy to run, it's very quick as you start going up in the core count, and I kind of started with 6 cores. So, you know, I really like the benchmark, and it definitely is a good workout for CPUs in the 14, 16, 18 core ranges. And at this point, like, it'll be like, if you've ever run Cinebench on a lower core count system, the amount of time it takes for these really high core count CPUs to actually finish the benchmark, that, like, it'll be ridiculous. It'll be seconds, literally seconds,
and
for these systems to finish.
Actually, we do have the evolution of Cinebench R11.5 for the past 18 years, like 17 years. Wow. Exactly, which is insane. I mean, if we take a look at the year 2000, that's the Intel Pentium 4 that is out, and basically there's like 1 core, 1 thread. So that's pretty much it. And then we can see the orange bar are actually the number of threads per architectures, and the black line is actually the one that expressed the score, which is the highest score ever recorded on HWBOT or online in any database. So we see that like in the year 2000, it's like 1 core, the score is very low, but I mean that was like 18 years ago. And then 2002, 2003, we have still Pentium 4 all the way up there from Uruguay, that is going quite well. And starting actually in 2004, we have in 2003 we have hyperthreading starting, which is the something that is quite common with all of the CPU nowadays. I mean, everyone have it. And if we move on to 2005, that's where we bump to dual core hyperthreading, which once again just bump, but that's gonna stay there for a good 3 years before we have the core and the core i5, i3, and i7 series coming in, and then that's where the number of core increase. And if we actually look in between 2009 and 2013, so basically up to 2014, that was 5 full years that there was nothing more than 6 core and 6 thread. So the 6 core and hyperthreading, which means 12 thread in total. Guys, before we jump into the increase and the madness increase of the point and the thread in the last 3 years, this evolution is quite long. I mean, it took 15 years to go above 12 thread on an architecture. Houston, I mean, I don't know exactly how long you've been working in this field, but what does that tell you?
It tells me that Intel was dragging their feet, to be honest. I wonder what changed in that space between before, like what exactly changed that allowed them to increase that.
Well, that was for sure the manufacturing process that did evolve over the past years. I mean, nowadays we have a cell phone with quite powerful things in our pocket, which is like basically a computer in our pocket, and then we have those insane CPUs in our PC. So it's the evolution was. I wonder how that's going to be in the next few years, because if we look at the increase of number of threads available on one architecture, I mean from 2015 up to now, it went to 16, 20, 36. What's going to be next year, like 64?
Right.
Well,
yeah, it will be definitely interesting. It seems like there's been a bit of a core count battle recently.
And do you think that's going to stop anytime soon?
No, not at all. I think that's. It seems to be that's the only space that they can make progress, because we can't get the things any smaller. So
that's quite impressive to see. I mean, I was surprised to see so many high core count CPUs, so more than 10 core CPUs flooding the market in 2017. That's definitely a milestone year for a lot of the industry. Buildzoid, on your side, I mean, you've been overclocking for the past like 2 years, 3 years maybe. So for you never
longer. It's just
5 years.
The last 3, it's been a bit more serious.
So when you started, what was the maximum core count you can get?
I actually started on a 3960X, and that was a 6-core. And I remember I was like, I absolutely hammered that CPU on a water cooling system to get it just over 15 points in Cinebench. And then from that, I progressed to a 5960X eventually. That started putting out, around 20 points again on water cooling. I never really, up until recently, I wasn't really putting the super high core count chips under, like the high core count stuff under liquid nitrogen. And now we're seeing CPUs that are putting like scores almost like pretty much double that. So it is insane to see the progress that has taken place from the 6 cores to the 8 cores, even the 10 core, because the 10 core really didn't clock that high.
So did you had a 6950X? So the previous generation
I actually had a 3960X, 5960X, 6950X. I've pretty much had everything except a 4960X in the high-end desktop processor space. So yeah, and I'm like, I think the progress between like a 5960X and a 6950X was a bit of a letdown. It wasn't that much. It lost a lot of the clocks went down, the core count went up, but it overall wasn't that big difference between the two chips. Because you only picked up 2 cores and it clocked like 10% slower. So, but now we're seeing these CPUs where it's like 40% more cores or 60% more cores, 80% more cores than the last top of the line chip. And they clock higher as well, which is just like, that's an incredible achievement from Intel.
I agree. I think that's insane that it's not just more cores, but it's also faster as well.
And
yeah, because with the 6950X, it looks like we were going to be just dropping the clock speed every time we see an increase in core count. And now it's like, no, you can have more cores and it can clock higher, which is just crazy to see.
That's good that you guys actually talk about the frequency itself, because if we look at those CPU, even though the base frequency is lower than what we had before, actually the turbo frequencies with all the cores enabled, or actually 2 out of the best cores, are going quite high, and that's why we are surprised. I mean, I definitely agree with you guys that we were expecting to have more cores and less frequency all the time, which is actually not the case. If we look at the 7940X CPU, which is so 14 core, 18 thread, it's supposed to be at 3.1 gigahertz of base frequency, which means that it's supposed to be at 3.1 gigahertz all the time, except when you have the max turbo boost, which is at 4.3 or sometimes like 4.4 by for 2 of the cores. So it's like over 4 gigahertz CPU with over like 14 cores. That's quite impressive. And Buildzoid, like, what do you expect from the guys doing the maximum CPU frequency?
So I've already seen somebody manage to validate the 18 core at 6.1 gigahertz, all cores. So I'm expecting sixes. It's like 5.9 to 6.1. Maybe if somebody has a really nice chip at this event, then maybe we'll see even a 6.2, which, that's going to be incredible. Because it's an 18 core or a 14 core, like any amount of cores at almost 6 gigahertz is just crazy. And then for the actual benchmarks, I'm expecting people to run between 5.5 and maybe 5.9, again, depending on the chips. But again, it's just ridiculously high clock speeds.
Yeah, I mean, that's you were talking about the 18 core, and that 18 core is actually the highest one with one of the low frequencies, so it's 2.9 gigahertz if I remember correctly. So 2.1 gigahertz, people, when they first saw that in the first few unofficial announcement before this CPU went on the market, they were like, oh, that's very low. But then it turns out that the turbo boost kicks in, and it's like, yeah, over 4 gigahertz easily. So, Houston, how do you see this impact in between the different PC that you have to build for work or for yourself?
That's an interesting question. I haven't actually built any of them yet, but I definitely see that this will have a huge effect. Just looking at the data that we've collected so far, I think it's gonna drive prices down overall, because you won't have to have these dual Xeon machines in order to achieve the same results.
And actually, do you think, and that's your personal opinion right here, do you think that's gonna this HEDT platform, so high-end desktop platform, will grab some of the customers from the Xeon family?
Oh, absolutely.
And which part of actually exactly, like, what do you think? Which part of this market will actually like move to HEDT platform instead of having server farms?
I think it'll be a little bit more of just a CPU rendering. Things like Cinema 4D, maybe like an Arnold for Maya, things like that.
Okay, I got it. So let's tune into the second CPU that will be overclocked tonight. That will be overclocked by BenchBros from Germany. That's going to be the Core X i9-7960X CPU. So this CPU is the 16-core 32-thread CPU. It's supposed to be clocked at 2.8 gigahertz, and the max turbo frequency is at 4.2 gigahertz on all cores, and it can go up to 4.4 on 2 of these cores. We usually say like all cores and 2 of these. With these high core count CPUs, we definitely have something that is quite new to most of the overclockers and enthusiasts, is that there's so many cores that actually some of them clock higher than the other ones. And there's one of the new thing in the Core i9 series that you can have like a per core overclocking settings and per voltage. Buildzoid, do you plan to play with that quite a lot?
I mean, like, I'd love to. Like, we saw sort of per core overclocking kind of be implemented on X99 already. You could definitely actually disable specific scores. Specific cores on the like a 5960X. So already then you would sort of start to see variance between cores on the chips. So for a given voltage, I remember one of the 5960Xs I had, it was pretty normal to see something like 200 megahertz disparity between the worst core on the chip and the best core on the chip. So there was like 1 or 2 cores that might actually run benchmarks at 5 gigahertz, and then the rest of the chip would be just stuck at like 4.8 or 4.7. And now the fact that and back then it wasn't really very well implemented, because I was really just disabling all the cores that couldn't run at the higher frequencies. There was some utilities that could kind of do it from the operating system where you could tune specific cores, but again, it wasn't very well, it wasn't really that user friendly or that accessible. And now we have per core voltage and per core clock, which is it gives you a lot more time to really dial in, a lot more settings to really dial in an overclock. And if you're going for a high frequency all core overclock, so you're aiming for say 4.5 gigahertz on all 14, all 16, or all 18 cores, The fact that you can dial in the voltage for every specific core means that you can actually, like, it won't chug as much power as it used to. Because if you were overclocking a 6950X, right, you were running a fixed voltage for the entire CPU. So every single core got the same voltage. And if there was, you know, say half the cores on, like, if there was one bad core on the chip, then every core on the chip was running, say, 50 millivolts or 100 millivolts higher voltage than was absolutely necessary. And that 100 millivolts more on all the other cores does stack up into a very large power consumption increase. So, you know, it's like, given enough time, you could dial these 14 cores, these 16 cores, and 18 cores into high clocks, and not, like, you can actually probably tweak the power consumption quite far down from what we'd normally be expecting, because you don't have to run one voltage for the entire chip, which is nice. So I'd really love to play with that. The other thing is, if you can set per core frequencies, you could do the opposite, where instead of trying to set one frequency on all cores and then dialing the voltages in for every core to run stable, you could also do the opposite, where you just set a fixed voltage for all the cores and then just clock each core as high as it goes to get maximum performance for a given power consumption level. Because voltage ultimately dictates power consumption a lot more than your frequency does. So if you have a really good cooling system and you know, okay, I want to run the entire chip on this 1.3 volts voltage, or 1.25, and you can actually cool that, then you can also dial in like a 4.4 gigahertz overclock on one core, 4.5, 4.6 on a few others, and you end up with a chip that, sure, not all the cores are at 4.5, but you're almost doing 4.5 in terms of average performance, because all the cores are at these frequencies around that. So that's really, like, if this is well implemented, I'm really excited to play with that.
So that's going to be, we can expect you to do that on some of your stream later on, maybe in the next few weeks or next few months.
I'm not sure I'll have X299 anytime soon as of right now, so
well,
we shall see.
Let's make it happen.
If I get a chip, I'll definitely look into this, because I've always loved these specific, like, core specific, like, the more settings you can play with, the better. So I'm really excited to try these out.
Okay, thank you, Buildzoid, for all your tight information. For everyone that just joined us, we are here at the Performance Matters event in Moscow, Russia. This is called the Multicore Madness Moscow. And basically tonight, we have the CPU from Intel, the Core X series, the 14-core, 16-core, and 18-core CPU being overclocked by 3 of the top guys from Russia and Europe. And basically here tonight, we will be doing overclocking and looking for performances. For everyone that just joined us, we were talking about the 14 cores and 16 core just before, and we have the 18 core here as well. And the 18 core is the CPU with the highest core count on the market. That's from Intel, and his real name is the Intel Core X i9 Intel Core X i9-7980XE, so that's an Extreme Edition, which is the top of the line one, and it's basically going to be very interesting to see this 18-core CPU being overclocked live here. We're not trying to break records tonight. We're just trying to show off what they can do, and just for you guys to know, it's 18-core. 36 thread. That's supposed to be at 2.6 gigahertz base frequency, but most of the times that's going to be running at 4.2 anyway, or 4.4 for 2 of the cores. Here tonight, we don't expect anything below 5 gigahertz anyway. So before turning into all the different setups, we will just give you a small hint for everyone that just tuned in here on Twitch OverClocking-TV channel. What is overclocking, basically?
Overclocking can be made with pretty much anything that uses an electronic component. That can be a processor, a graphic card, memory, that can even be used for consoles and cell phones, and maybe your smart coffee machine. Anyone can do it, and you just need to follow some basic rules. The faster your computer will go, the more heat it will produce. The maximum heat is actually a limitation. So, to keep it cool, we use different cooling solutions. You can use better fans, like you will use during the summer if it's too hot. You can use water circuits, like we use in a car, to cool it down. Or you can even use extreme solutions, like a fridge system or liquid nitrogen. Basically, it's to make your computer go faster. For example, your computer uses a processor that is working at 4 gigahertz. Overclocking will be making that computer work at 4.2 gigahertz. Start now by registering on HWBOT.org and watching some of these Skylake-benches videos that will explain you in less than 3 minutes how you can do it with your computer. You can find more videos like this on overclocking-TV.com or on our YouTube channel, and we are usually live on twitch.tv overclocking-TV channel. Until next time, keep pushing it.
And we are back here in Russia for the Performance Matters event, Multicore Madness Moscow. For you guys that don't know the Performance Matters, and that's the first time you see it, that's already the third time this year. We had one in Las Vegas during CES, and we had one in Taipei as well, where we had liquid helium on the 4-core CPUs, the skylake-x CPUs. So that's the one of the series that is on the X299 platform, along with some of the partners that we have here as well tonight, like Asus Republic of Gamer and Seasonic. For you guys to know exactly what it looks like when you use liquid helium and not just liquid nitrogen, let's just have a look at what happened back in June at the Performance Matters Taipei Helium Night. Welcome back everyone to the Performance Matters Moscow, Multicore Madness Moscow here. We are in Moscow in Russia, and I'm joined by Buildzoid and Houston. We will be commenting live everything that's going to happen tonight. We have 3 overclockers from Europe. We have Wizerty from France, BenchBros from Germany, and Smoke from Russia. They are all 3 overclocking one of the Core X series CPU. Wizerty is on the Core i9-7940X. BenchBros is on the 7960X, and of course Russia owns first overclocker is Smoke, and is on the 18-core CPU, which is the highest CPU. This is madness, basically. That's why the name is like this, and is on the 18-core CPU, the 7980XE, so that's the Extreme Edition one. All these CPUs are from Intel in the Core X series. All these CPUs have unlocked multiplier, and all these CPUs have insane performances, and honestly I can't wait to see what's going on. So let's tune into BenchBros, which is from Germany and is overclocking the 16-core platform tonight. So he's running Cinebench 11.5. Oh, Oh no, we do have Wizerty, which is from France. So yeah, let's go into Wizerty and the screen of Wizerty as well. Wizerty from France is actually the #1 overclocker in France. Is well ranked in the top 20 in the world. And if we have a quick look at what he's doing right now, he's doing Cinebench or 11.5. He's on the 7940X at 5.4 gigahertz with all the cores activated. So 14 cores, 28 thread, and oh my god, like 4,000 point, over 4,000 points. So 4,141 point. That's quite high. I mean, Buildzoid, Houston, that was like one hell of a first run we can see on the live.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, that absolutely blows away what the 6950X was ever capable of doing. Actually, the record for the 6950X is 2,878 points. So this is almost double that. And
so, oh my god, you
well,
have
actually,
over
no,
4,000 XTU as well.
Way ahead. Like you are looking at almost. It's over. It's almost 40% faster, which you'd kind of expect for the core count. He is working up the frequency now, so it should get a lot higher still. And I think they've only just started with this with overclocking these chips, so they've not completely maxed out the platforms. There's a lot more to this than just raw frequency. So after they dial in the frequencies for the benchmarks, I imagine they'll also start dialing in the memory as well as possibly running some kind of tweaks on the actual, like the Windows installations to get even higher scores. So yeah, like a 4,000 plus point run right off the bat, that is
on XTU. That's something I personally never saw as well, and it's just next door. Oh, that's crazy. And on the 11.5, that's 44.52 point. And if we look at the schematics we had just before, that was below 30 point, which is, I mean, that's just a 14-core CPU. So that's 7940X. So that's 14 core, 28 thread. But that's at 5.5 gigahertz. Of course, the guys use liquid nitrogen. You can expect. Actually, what can you expect in terms of frequencies with a regular air cooling system, Buildzoid?
So the thing about X299 CPUs, and especially the high core count stuff, is they are really, really power hungry once you start pushing them. So on air cooling, I would not expect any of these chips to do much more than, say, 4.4 gigahertz. And even 4.4 might be pushing it for a lot of air coolers. Like, you would need a top-of-the-line air cooler, and you might actually need to do, switch out the fans to something faster, because these things pull a lot of power, and they produce a lot of heat. On, say, water cooling, since that's the next step up and is still runnable for daily, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these chips hitting as much as 4.8, maybe even 4.9 gigahertz in some cases.
Well, here tonight he's at 5.5, and as you can see, he's using liquid nitrogen, and sometimes they have to blow torch in all that. For everyone that just joined us on Twitch and that have no clue what is going on here, Houston, you are someone that is not an extreme overclocker. So how would you explain that to someone that just tuned in right now?
Well, just from that score that he just got right off the bat with this one processor is just barely under the best 14-core dual Xeon results that I've seen.
So we're talking about like one CPU, 14 cores, something that anyone can buy, that is doing pretty much the same as the dual Xeon from the previous generation.
Correct.
That's insane. That's crazy. That's madness.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, Buildzoid, I mean, some of the guys are benching different systems, and it's. I mean, we are still at 5.5 gigahertz, and we're talking about frequencies just before in the opening show. I mean, 5.5 gigahertz. That's quite a lot, even under liquid nitrogen. That's not something that was easily achievable on the previous generation as well.
Yeah, no, like this is actually, I think, the best clocking high core count CPU before skylake-x was, I think it was Ivy Bridge, but those only, like, that was the Ivy Bridge E series, so that'd be like a 4960X, except that was only a 6-core. Then we did have the 5960X. Some of those, in some cases, could do just over 6 gigahertz, but, you know, those were really, like, golden sample CPUs and very, very rare. And really, most 5960Xs would be averaging sort of around 5.5 on liquid nitrogen. And then, you know, then we got Broadwell E, where we finally got a 10-core, but Broadwell E sort of maxed out between 5 and 5.5 gigahertz. So, you know, this is already beyond the capabilities of most Broadwell E chips ever tested. And, you know, like skylake-x, just the frequencies achievable with liquid nitrogen on skylake-x are just some of the highest for high-end desktop just in history. Especially once you take into account that these chips have a lot more cores than any of their predecessors.
Hey, I mean, it's 14 cores. That's not something we have seen any time before that. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, even the 14 core is it's a 40% increase over the last generation best. So, yeah, it's a monster.
So we're seeing Wizerty now. We're gonna switch back to the big, powerful one, which is the 18-core CPU from which is actually being overclocked by Smoke from Russia. Of course, him as well is under LN2 liquid nitrogen, and if we have a little bit closer look, he's actually not doing anything. He's at 1.2 gigahertz. Don't worry, that's not the overclocking score. That's just the reduction, like power reduction settings. So as we can see, that's the Intel Core i9-7980XE, and then he's back into changing some of the settings. So yeah, I'm like at 1.2 and I have nothing else to do to just go 5 gigahertz straight in. That's crazy. Okay, don't try this at home. Go step by step. Oh, actually that's not even Smoke overclocking this setup. All right. Actually, like Houston, what do you expect from this 18 core? That's something that you want to play with as soon as you can.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll be excited to see where. I'm kind of excited to see where, because we at work we do very kind of conservative overclocking, and I feel like we'll be able to see higher stable clocks across the board, really.
And yeah, literally across the board. So we're back onto Wizerty screen now, and let's tune in into the XTU details for the 7940X. I mean, Buildzoid, XTU, that's something you will mostly use when you are actually on the Intel CPUs. How would you present that to someone that just tuned in?
So XTU is it's a benchmark and overclocking utility for Intel chips, so it won't actually run on anything else. You can't even open it. But if you do have an Intel platform, you can use it to overclock, and then it even includes a stress test. So it's a great tool actually for daily overclocking. It's also a great tool for it is a pretty popular benchmark in the in the sort of competitive overclocking scene, and it gives you access to pretty much all the CPU settings that are absolutely necessary for maxing out your CPU. So you basically can do most of your CPU overclocking without ever going into the BIOS. Now, personally, I would still say BIOS, like overclocking from the BIOS, is better, but you know, you can do all your overclocking from XTU as well. It's just, I don't know, I'm old-fashioned.
and still you're one of the new guy.
It's yeah, because I don't know, I just started, like, when I started it was still all BIOS, and so, you know, that got ingrained really quickly, so.
Oh God, I love to see these guys benching, because they all feel so relaxed when they bench. They know exactly what's going on on their platform. They know exactly what they're supposed to do as well. That's quite a thing. I know that if we maybe can have the camera moving to BenchBros, he's having some condensation, so he had to remount what he had before, and now it will be back benching. So what is happening here tonight for everyone that just joined us is they are overclocking the 14-core, 16-core, and 18-core CPUs from Intel, so respectively the Core i9-7940X, the 7960X, and the 7980XE Extreme Edition. They're all using the same kind of hardware, and we have Wizerty from France and BenchBros from Germany, along with Smoke from Russia. Let's focus a little bit more on Smoke then. So on the BenchBros, sorry, he's from Germany, from Jena in Germany. He's actually currently number 5th in the country and ranked 67th in the world. He used to be at the top of his game just a year ago, and I mean, family and all that obviously went into the competitive leagues, and he's still here. He's still here playing with the 16-core CPU. Of course, his hardware is based on the Intel Core i9-7960X Rampage 6 Apex motherboard, memory, Predator memory from HyperX, along with the Fury SSD, and of course, all that, as Buildzoid said just earlier, you need power, and you need good power. So basically, they're going to be using the Seasonic Prive 1200 watt PSU, which is the one of the top of the line PSU from Seasonic. So right now, that's Andy, BenchBros. Actually, I know that Houston, you don't know these guys. You never met them before, right?
Correct.
So what do you think, as someone that is completely from outside of this extreme overclocking world? How do you look up to these guys, and how do you see them? Like, what do you think?
I think this sort of thing is really important to kind of push the limits of what's possible. A lot of times, I feel it's kind of similar to like super high-end car modifications and stuff, where people will push 1,200 horsepower out of a little 4-cylinder car. It helps to it kind of feeds back into the manufacturing processes and just overall thought process of how far we can actually go.
That's crazy. I mean, the fact that these guys can push it was that much. It's insane, and the default performances are insane as well. I mean, that's not something to be on par with anything we had before. I mean, like you said, Buildzoid, sometimes it was like over 2,000 points, and we're very happy with what was on the market. And now there's like, yeah, if it's not 4,000, it's like, meh, I just want more. That's madness. That's something you could actually exactly say this way. So yeah, they use the Seasonic PSUs. Buildzoid, what do you think about those PSUs?
I mean, so I don't think I have one power supply that's built by Seasonic, but they are very a very well respected power supply manufacturer. They've been making great PSUs for ages and ages and ages now. Until very recently, they basically didn't have competition in sort of the consumer PSU market in terms of power regulation, ripple suppression, or any of the sort of performance metrics that a PSU has. So these are really top-of-the-line power supplies. I'm just sad that Seasonic doesn't make higher wattage levels. So 1,200 watts, if you're depending on what you're doing with the system when overclocking, it's just not enough always. So.
But let's face it, for a gaming system, that's going to be good enough. But when you do extreme overclocking like this...
for a gaming system, 1,200 watts for most gaming systems is just completely overkill. It's just, sometimes you want to run 3D Mark Firestrike on 4 graphics cards, and then you start looking at something like, multiple PSUs, because you can't actually get one to run the entire setup, especially once you start hammering something like a, well, in my case, it was a 5960X. Basically, I had 3 GPUs and a 5960X, and I was shutting down a 1,600 watt power supply because I was overdrawing it, which is just absolutely insane.
We are in extreme case, of course. I mean, we're talking about guys using liquid nitrogen to do that.
That setup, it's like ignoring the fact that the power supply wasn't handling it. That setup was basically, I was even once I had a second power supply hooked up to that, it was a case of it finishes the benchmark and it's not nearly it was a race against time to get the freaking score saved, because that setup was so far on the edge of its stability that it was crashing just constantly. Like, it wouldn't even reliably post all the time. So that was well beyond normal use case.
So we are exactly, we're not in normal use case here. We're by default, these CPUs are extremely powerful, a lot of performances out of it. And basically here we have handy BenchBros that is trying to squeeze everything he can out of this Core i9-17960X, which is a 16-core 32-thread CPU. So I think we will be able to see his screen, and he's doing some benchmark on Cinebench 11.5 and compare it to the 45.29 points we got from Wizerty at 5.4 gigahertz. Maybe we'll be able to see what's going on BenchBros screen soon. Because from what I got as information is at 5.3 gigahertz and is already doing a better score as well, which means that's actually interesting. So if he's having a better score at a lower frequency, it do have a few more cores as well, so that might play in the game. I mean, that's definitely something that will play in that. Houston, would you prefer having a higher frequency or higher core count?
Well, for me personally, higher frequency. Yeah, for sure.
You're the frequency guy?
Yeah. Because like personally, for what gaming and whatnot, you kind of reach a plateau beyond, maybe 6 cores for that sort of thing.
Okay. And the thing is, with this I mean, you used to build like high HWBOT. It will always depend on the kind of usage you have. So if we pick some kind of usage with you say like gaming, maybe 6 core will be good enough. But when we speak about pure raw performances out of it, like people that do encoding or system like this, of course more core will make more sense in that matters.
It kind of depends on the software at that point. Like we've seen Premiere performance kind of plateau at about 8 to 10 cores, and so it definitely depends on what software you're using and how well optimized it is for multi-core, multi-thread processes.
Okay, and do you expect that like update on the different platforms will be a different software will actually solve this?
Oh, they'll have to, yeah. With these super high core processors coming, they'll definitely have to start kind of writing the code to take advantage of it.
So that's just gonna be as much as we can in the next few weeks, basically, or next few months from now. We talk about the 14 core, 16 core. What about the 18 core that is being overclocked by our friend Smoke? And if we we were having the feed and just went off straight in. So what is happening is we have Smoke here with the white T-shirt with this overclocking the highest CPU we can ever bought as a consumer, which is the Intel Core i9-17980XE, 18 core, 36 thread. So that's the Extreme Edition. So that's the top of the line one. And Smoke is actually from Moscow, from here, and is #1 in Russia. That's actually the best overclocker in Russia, and is very well ranked in the top 50 in the world as well. So tonight we have 3 overclockers from 3 different part of the planet, I would say, from Europe and Russia, and they're all using the pretty much the same system except the CPU. So that's an Intel Core i9 CPU. So instead 14, 16, and 18 cores. We're here and for an event from HWBOT called The Performance Matters. And of course, we do have partners such as Asus, Republic of Gamers, Seasonic, and HyperX. So without them, the event will not be able to be pulled out, and that's why they use these kind of system. Because, well, I mean, it's reliable. You see these guys doing it with the extreme setup. So, I mean, that's quite interesting to see them flowing into the details and the button-ups. And Predator is arguing with his friend on the side, like, yeah, I want to push it higher, but it's like, yeah, should I? So a little bit more nitrogen. Hey, Houston, did you ever try to manipulate liquid nitrogen before?
No, not at all. In fact, in my most of my experience when it comes to liquid nitrogen is actually in the kitchen. So
it's
a whole different kind of world.
Did you use that for cooking before?
Not me personally, but some of the people I've worked with have. Yeah.
Interesting. So you made some ice creams.
In a sense, some other things as well.
All right. Hey, that's very good. That's very nice to be here with you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you guys on the live chat as well. Keep on posting your questions. We're trying to monitor all of them on the different channel and social media as well. And we honestly, it's here. That's madness. Like literally, this is madness. We have 14 core, 16 core, and 18 cores from Intel. That was released like this just a few days ago, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't remember the exact date to be honest, but that was just a few days ago, and it's already being overclocked under LN2. This is on. This is on. In terms of basically in terms of frequencies, we have seen 5.4 on the 14 cores. We have seen 4.3 on the 16 core by BenchBros, so the 7960X. And we'll be soon looking at the one from Smoke. If we can get his screen back, maybe it will have some something on. Yeah. So 11.5. So 18 core, 36 thread. You don't matter opening CPU-Z while benchmarking.
Well, it looks like he's just doing test runs, as we saw when that CPU-Z window opened up. It was at 4 gigahertz.
Oh, he's very low on voltage as well, so he's just restarting to do the thing. So he was at 1.34 voltage for the cache as well, and is now at 1.43. Which means that adjusting some of the cores will help you out on just finding the right one. So now is going to 50 multiplier, which means 5 gigahertz, and still benching just to see if it's still stable. See, it's already 49 points, which is more than the 14 cores, of course, more than the 16 cores, of course, but it's like there's a good 4 points in between each of this benchmark. But this one is not at 5.4 gigahertz, is not at 5.2 gigahertz, it's actually at 5 gigahertz. So we can see that the number of core increase actually does bring a lot of some increase in the benchmark as well, which is something that we expected to see, especially in Cinebench. So back
it's
on,
just crazy to see these scores.
So back on Wizerty, which is 13th worldwide at the time of preparing that event. And you can see you have a shard with like a roster on it, and it's the FFOC, so the French Federation of Overclocking, which is one of the main federation in France of overclocking. So they like help out all the new guys and things. And it froze his screen, so it's just gonna restart. Buildzoid, as you are an extreme overclocker and you're doing that quite often, most of the time on the stream, what can happen when you do overclock on LN2? Well, a lot of things, obviously.
Ignoring just the normal crashing. So, with overclocking on liquid nitrogen, so basically, you have something called a cold bug. That is generally, well, it depends on the architecture, but that is one of the things that we see. Smoke was really fighting with a lot of the blowtorching the LN2 pot. So basically, that is when the CPU gets too cold, it'll actually stop working, just completely shut down. pretty much freeze up, and you need to warm it back up. And I think skylake-x runs best around a minus 100 degrees centigrade.
Whoa.
So that's actually in line with a lot of the other sort of past CPUs that we've seen from Intel that used a fully integrated voltage regulator like skylake-x does, which because we also know that, for example, Kaby Lake and Kaby Lake-x, these do not have cold bugs whatsoever, but the integrated voltage regulator just does not work below that minus 100 degree range. So you need to keep these CPUs in that temperature range. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. The other issue that you run into with extreme overclocking is obviously the condensation, right? If you have something that is extremely cold in ambient room temperature with just regular humidity in the air, you end up with a situation where you have water and ice building up everywhere. And that means that for these extreme overclocking setups, you spend a lot of time just making sure everything is insulated. So basically protected from the water. You'll see blue shop towel used commonly to catch any water running around. Ice is actually not that big an issue because ice itself is not conductive, but any liquid water that you get as you either cool down or if you thermal cycle it because you have to warm it back up because of some issue, that causes a lot of water buildup, and that is a real issue because if you don't get your insulation quite just perfect, you end up in situations where you might have like water in the memory slots, and it won't.
Well,
most
water
of the time,
and computer
that will
parts,
not kill your system outright. What it will do is it will make it crash over and over and over again. Sometimes you'll end up in situations where water in weird places on the motherboard will just cause the system to not start at all, and then you basically need to tear down the setup, dry it out, and start running again. Though sometimes that drying out period takes a lot longer than you would really want it to. Sometimes you need to let parts sit for, say, 24 hours before they really work. And if you're in a high humidity environment, sometimes even just 24 hours is not enough to get a motherboard to dry out properly.
Which is actually something that would be interesting to see here. The guys here are not trying to reach the highest score possible. They're not trying to break world records here. They're just trying to push that in a safe way to see where they can do with the platform. And as a matter of fact, Wizerty and BenchBros did not add any of these CPU in hand before this morning. So they didn't add the time to test, they didn't add the time to anything. So that's basically the first hour of testing that they have with these three new CPU from Intel, the 7940X, the 7960X, and the 7980XE. So that's very interesting to see what they can pull out of these platform on the Asus ROG Maximus 6 Apex motherboard, the Seasonic 1200 watts PSU, and the HyperX memory and SSDs. It's insane to see them, like they're the top of their game. I mean, they are the best overclockers. Wizerty is the best overclocker in France. Smoke is the best overclocker in Russia. BenchBros is one of the top overclocker in Germany and used to be at the top of his game just a year ago, and he's still strong in the game. And it's always good to see these guys here. And for once, they're not fighting for the scores. They're actually not competing at all. They're just enjoying the madness and the fun they have with this whole platform. I mean, I guess Buildzoid or Houston, you would have wished to be here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially if you actually let me touch a system for once.
Which is something I will never let you touch, is the stream system, of course.
Oh yeah, no. I don't. Yeah, we actually need the stream to work, so that would be a bad idea. But I'd definitely love to try out one of these 14 cores or a 16 core or an 18 core. I'm kind of attached to the 14 core because it's not that much. I'm just, from what I'm seeing already with it, I already like that one the best because it's not, it's not as expensive as the other chips. And it's not that far behind. So I'm sort of seeing it as it would be a pretty viable option for a lot of 3D benchmarking, because I am ultimately very much I prefer benchmarking GPUs, even though that doesn't tend to go that well. just because it's a bit more complicated than the usual CPU benchmarking. And yeah, I just see the 14 core as a sort of really good alternative to the 6950X I have right now. Because it does get, 40% more cores, it clocks higher. And I just see it sort of as a well-rounded chip for X299. I mean, obviously the 16 core and the 18 core are faster, but I think like the 14 core starts to be the point where that's enough. That's really enough for my kind of use cases.
Well, well, thank you for all the details. I mean, that's always good to have your input on that. I actually did not expect you to say, "Oh well, I will just mod everything I can." So get the board and remove part of it, which is something you usually do on your streams. Tear down some of the part of the computer parts and actually solder some others. So for everyone that just joined us tonight, I'm Trouffman from Overclocking-TV. I'm a regular host on this channel, and tonight we have the chance to be at the Performance Matters Multicore Madness Moscow, where we have 3 of the top overclockers in Europe: Wizerty, BenchBros, and Smoke, overclocking the latest CPU from Intel from the Core X series. So the Core i9-7940X, 14 cores, the 7960X, 16 cores, and the 7980XE, which is 18 core, which is the biggest CPU you can get on the market today, which is insane. It's total madness for it. And I'm joined here tonight by 2 special guests. One is Buildzoid, that you just heard talking, which is an hardware enthusiast streamer. Basically, if you get something in his hand, he will always modify it and try to get the most out of it, and that's true. You Buildzoid, don't say otherwise. That's exactly what you do. If you get something in your place, that's definitely gonna get teared down. You're gonna make videos on it on your YouTube channel or stream that on your Twitch channel. Actually, you guys can find that on the link on the live chat as well. And we have Houston from actually from the US, and that is live with us here tonight, and he's you are here because you're building systems, like high-end systems, used to be based out of server parts or server system for CAO and DAO, and that's why you're here tonight. I have to be honest with everyone tonight, and I love to do that. That's the first time you're actually taking part into an overclocking stream ever.
Yes, that's right.
So how do you feel so far about all that? You're the rookie here.
Yeah.
So how does it go for you so far? I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, you didn't knew that much about extreme overclocking before, like 2 months ago, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It's fascinating actually to see just how far these things can be pushed with kind of normal like this is kind of stuff that just about anybody can get their hands on, like liquid nitrogen. You just can get small amounts for yourself, and you can. It seems like this is kind of something that a normal person could just kind of try in their garage if they're somewhat careful about it. It's pretty cool.
It's not anymore a garage thing. There's competitions going on all over the world. There's the Overclocking World Championship. Like honestly, this is some of them are actually doing that for work as well. I mean, some of the top overclockers work into some of the manufacturers, that be on the VGA side or the motherboard, or even at Intel. I mean, back in the end of August, actually right before going to PAX, where we actually had a panel together, Houston. How was at the Intel OC Lab in Oregon, and that's insane. I mean, there's overclockers working there full time. I mean, that's
cool to hear.
That's awesome. That's madness again. I mean, that's the keyword for tonight. If you guys didn't catch that yet. So let's focus back on some of the guys. We have Wizerty here, is from France, and you can see he's like unplugging and replugging things. What is happening is he's trying to find out if he had condensation concerns, and actually Wizerty and BenchBros almost never bench here for the past 3 years in Russia, so they had to adapt to the humidity level, to the area as well here in the venue. Wizerty is from France, is currently #1 in the world, but that 2 years ago we had the chance to meet him in Taiwan and got some questions for him. Let's tune into that.
So I'm Wizerty, a French overclocker, and I overclocked on Clan team. I work as an engineer for 7 years now. I overclocked for 4 years, maybe 5 now times. I start overclocking to have more frame on game, and then I feel it really exciting. So I start with Shiler and then go to dry ice and like in nitrogen. And now I don't spend a week without leaking nitrogen. So I think my best moment on this sport are all live events. I really like this kind of when you meet everybody and you meet new people, you see old friends, things like this. So really like live events. I don't know if it's because I reach a higher level, but it's much more complicated. When I start, you just have to buy one CPU, one graphic card, and you can enjoy it. Now you have to bin a lot of CPU, bin motherboard, bin VGA, bin everything, and spend a lot of time tweaking to be competitive with other guys. So I think the level is really high now. In 5 years, overclocking, don't really know. I hope it will not be worse. I mean, with really low CPU and low VGA, we can see on some brand you cannot change voltage anymore on some graphic card, or you ask for really special V-mode. So I hope in future it will be more free. For new overclocker, an advice: have fun and do your best. Keep your motivation at high as possible, and you will be good someday.
I like the "you will be good someday," maybe if I'm not there. So yeah, that was 2 years ago, and it was talking about people looking up overclocking features, and we are 2 years after that, and obviously that's never happened, which is very good for us. So let's tune in a little bit more into Wizerty achievement. So as we say, he's currently 13 out of more than 117,000 people. So that's that's one of the top guys. He's the best overclocker in France. He's actually in the Team French Legion as well, which is he's the captain and also one of the main guy of that team. He's in the Elite League and Buildzoid. Like, what does the league matters here? Because the Elite League is really for the top guys, but what are the other leagues that exist?
So, the Elite League is for people who basically get supported heavily by hardware manufacturers, basically guys who are almost full-time overclockers. And then as you go down the leagues, like I'm in the Extreme League. So the Extreme League is for basically anybody using liquid nitrogen. And then below the Extreme League, you have people working with, you have the Apprentice League, which is people working with dry ice, phase change, chilled water cooling, basically everything that sort of tops out in the temperature range of, say, minus 100-ish. So actually you can get, you can see quite a lot of people from the Apprentice League getting some really high scores. And then going even below that, you have the Enthusiast League, which is everyone on water cooling or air cooling who's been at HWBOT for a while now. And before that, you get the Novice and the Rookie Leagues, which are for people who are basically newcomers to the scene. So I think the Rookie League is for anybody new for 3 months, if I remember correctly. And the Novice League is for people who have been at HWBOT for 6 months. And then everybody from those leagues gets pushed up into Enthusiast after a period of time.
Well, that's thanks for the details. And actually, Houston, if you were about to create an account on HWBOT today, you would be in the Rookie, and that would be funny to see a Rookie with the dual processor system. If you bench them before actually sending them to clients.
Oh, I'm sorry, say again?
Would you do that? Like register on HWBOT, be a rookie, and then think, oh, actually, there's something very interesting going on the live. So you see, Wizerty.
we could. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's trying to open a CPU. Yeah, exactly what's going on. So we're gonna see the inside of the CPU. So there's a ton of thermal paste. I'm gonna explain that a little bit after. So this is the internal of the CPU. So Buildzoid, we're gonna tune in back to you, Houston, but. Buildzoid, what is happening? Why is he opening the CPU like this? That's not something you're supposed to be able to do.
Right. So basically, due to a switch from so Intel has switched their CPU packaging from soldered integrated heat spreaders to heat spreaders with thermal paste under them. And the thermal paste doesn't really do that well under liquid nitrogen, which is just 99% of thermal pastes on the market don't do well on liquid nitrogen just because they're not designed to function properly at temperatures that low. So extreme overclockers will delid CPUs, basically open them up like this, and replace the thermal paste with something like, say, Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut or the Gelid GC Extreme or Kinpin Cooling KPX thermal paste, and these are basically thermal paste specifically designed to function at these extremely low temperatures. Now, the reason why you see so much thermal paste being used under the IHS is that at these very low temperatures, even with these thermal pastes specifically designed for liquid nitrogen usage, you sometimes get something called a crack, where the thermal paste basically just disconnects between the thermal paste between the IHS and the CPU just fails and disconnects one from the other. And your temperatures basically shoot through the roof because you have no thermal transfer. So to counteract that, you use a lot of thermal paste, and that does help with the cracking a bit.
And we heard earlier this week on one of the Enthusiast video that usually you don't put that much thermal paste, as you say, and you just put as much as you can on this one. And it's impressive the size of the die as well of these CPUs. I mean, that's huge. That's not something we see quite often, and that's not something as an end user you will be able to see. The process of removing the IHS, which is the cover on top of the CPU, which Wizerty removed before actually cleaning up all the thermal paste, which is exactly the one you have in hand right now, is it's a process called deliding. And this is made by some of the users, mostly extreme overclockers, to just gain a better thermal interface in between. Of course, they can if they can get better, they will just do it. And some of the guys do that on different systems as well. I mean, Houston, where as you build system for companies and people, do you usually delid the CPU you put them, or if people ask you to do it, will you do it?
I know that we've done it in the past, but in recent years, not so much. The risk of damaging the CPU kind of outweighs the performance gains.
So in a like consumer way, so basically if you want to buy a high-end desktop platform, that's not something you will ever do. Of course, you break your warranty, just for you guys to be sure. You cannot remake these kind of chip anymore after. But for extreme overclockers, of course, that's going to be a difference. What are the expectations in terms of difference if you actually do the deliding of any kind of CPU?
I've heard upwards of 20C.
Under load?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's just 20C like this. Idle. It's like, oh yeah, you might have an issue here. Your cooler, you might have forgot to remove the plastic wrap which is on your cooler.
Right.
Is that something you would like to, Houston? Is that something you would like to do in the next few weeks or months, just to try out?
It'd be interesting to try on a personal level. Again, I think from the company's standpoint on it, it's not quite worth the risk.
Obviously, for the company you work for, that's definitely something
right.
that, I mean, company-wise, of course, that's something you have to be very careful of if you sell that to your clients. Buildzoid, that's something you do with all your chip, if I'm right.
Yeah, if it doesn't have a soldered heat spreader, it's getting delidded. It's just, you can't, like, because I do run on liquid nitrogen pretty often, so it's just, I can't, not delid. And, well, there are delid tools pretty much made that you should use. I mean, for high-end desktop chips, you have to use a tool. There's no way around it. Because you do have that stacked PCB thing going on under the IHS, and you can't really like on, say, the mainstream CPUs, you could use a razor blade, and if you were really careful, you could get around, you could disconnect the IHS from the chip without necessarily cutting up the PCB, which would obviously kill the CPU, and pretty much in many cases that would just kill the CPU outright. So doing it with a razor blade is very risky. I use a delid tool for even my mainstream chips. And then for the high-end desktop stuff, you absolutely need a delid tool. And these are pretty safe. I have heard that for the X299 chips, it's really common that even with using a delid tool, you might knock some capacitors off of the CPU. But luckily, they're not 100. They're not completely necessary for the chip to function. So even with a few of those missing, the chips still work. And actually, it's I think it's Silicon Lottery. They're a business that actually offers pre-bin CPUs, and for all of their skylake-x chips, they delid them for testing, because you can't really hit very high frequencies even on good chips unless you delid them. So
yeah, and we're talking about extreme overclocking all the times here. I mean, for end users, you can just buy this chip, just plug it in the PC, and then that's gonna be madness. They're the basic madness, I would say. But these guys here are just insane. They're just going full out, full madness on it. And you can see Wizerty dried out all this setup, and we have BenchBros on the side, which is exactly doing the same thing. They're remounting, which means they are rebuilding the system to remove the water, remove any kind of excess of condensation as well. And I wish I could hear what the two guys are saying, and they're actually talking about I guess they're talking about the way they use the container and how they bring up the temperature for it. Buildzoid, as a reminder for everyone that just joined here on the Overclocking-TV Twitch channel, what are the two biggest issues an overclocker can run into during extreme overclocking?
Okay, so your first biggest problem is going to be the cold bug of the CPU, which is basically CPU doesn't work below a certain temperature. So if you hit that, you need to, basically you're going to have to warm up the LN2 pot and get the CPU to start and then to run. It also means that you basically, for a lot of CPUs, you basically can't just pour liquid nitrogen willy-nilly. You have to really dose it, or it just, you end up with a situation where the CPU just shuts down on you. So you basically have to do a lot of thermal management. And then the other thing that you run into is, well, since you're at very, very low temperatures, you get a lot of condensation, a lot of ice and water just building up on the system. The ice is not a problem, that's not conductive. The water is a problem, and it won't necessarily, it very rarely will kill something outright. But most of the time you end up in situations where the system just shuts down on you or has really unpredictable behavior, stability goes to hell. You end up in a situation where basically a lot of the time, if it gets bad enough, you can't actually start the system at all, and you need to take it apart, dry it out, and start over. So, yeah.
Well, as you say, you will always just dry everything, remount, and start over. That's exactly what is going on in all the competition, the overclocking competitions. These guys knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They've been doing that for years. And Wizerty is as we said just before, Wizerty is the best overclocker in France. He's actually the president of the French Federation of Overclocking as well. I mean, these guys are... the Wizerty is not full-time, but pretty much is doing most of his time on it. But someone that is very interesting to focus on now is BenchBros from Germany, and is currently 5th in the world and in Germany, and 67th in the world, as well in the Elite League, which means the guys that are heavily supported by the industry. And tonight is the overclocking the Intel Core i9-7960X, so that's 16 core and 32 thread. Buildzoid, Houston, we were talking just before as the different leagues. So Elite is the one that is highly supported by the industry. They get hardware in hand, they can get to this kind of event as well, even though BenchBros and Wizerty, that's the first time tonight, they actually used these CPUs. They didn't have the time to get it in earlier this week. And if you were to register today on HWBOT, you will be like everyone else that register on HWBOT. You will be a rookie. And a rookie is basically someone that is the first 3 months in HWBOT. Do you plan to have an account on the on HWBOT and post some scores?
I think it'd be interesting to register under the company name and just post some of the benchmarks that we see. We'd definitely be kind of lower ranks because, like I said, our overclocks are fairly conservative. But it'd just be fun, I think, just to kind of play around in that space.
Well, thank you. And if we focus a little bit more on BenchBros, so we say 67th in the world, and I mean worldwide there's more than 1,017, 100,000. Sorry, there's more than 117,000 people doing this. So that's not something that is a garage space anymore. That's definitely something with leagues. There's a proper a league system, which is all managed on HWBOT. All the competition have official judging as well, which is quite interesting to see. That is, as you said earlier, it's not a garage thing anymore. And nationally wide is number 5th in Germany, which is a very competitive country. Dan Cobb is from that country. Is currently number 1 in the world. So that's a very tight battle for them. And is doing that since 2006, but you have an account on HWBOT since June 2008. So like it's been more than 10 years that he's actually active into competitive overclocking, which means the guys that bench for pride and fun and hardware and prizes. I mean, a little bit not like you, Buildzoid.
Wait, could you repeat that?
You're not benching for pride. You're trying to?
I mean, I guess you could. I'm not super serious about it. Yeah, I mean, but I don't like. I do have a certain level of like, this score is so bad that it's just not going up, you know. But it is like, I generally bench for fun, so it's not like I'm. Super like I don't necessarily like, at least right now it's just I do care about my ranking a bit. I'm currently ranked number 4 in the Czech Republic, and I'm not that far behind everybody ahead of me, so it's like, well, you know, if I put in a bit more effort, I could be second, maybe even first. So it's not like I definitely don't do it for the sake of being first. That's not my intention. But when it's like, well, it wouldn't be that much harder to be first, sure, I'll try go for it. But most of the time it is just to try crazy stuff out and just have fun.
If we have a look at the hardware library of BenchBros, it's quite insane. He has bench 56 different kind of CPUs. So I guess that's multiple of them every time. So 56 different CPUs that get tested, and it's like 99% of them are Intel, and he knows very well the Intel platform. And honestly, he's benching he used to bench quite a lot in the Core 2 Duo era, and in the Core i7 he basically did all the case SKUs from the past Core series. And it's very well interesting that he had some Xeon as well. He had some Xeon X3460, 5260, and I think 5460 as well, which were like nowadays you won't need to overclock these ones anymore. You're just gonna get like the 16 core, the 17960X or the 7980X XE, the CPU we're seeing tonight. It's quite an extensive library. It did test 62 different motherboards as well, from a lot of different manufacturers. There's a lot of Asus motherboard in that one as well. Most of the Maximus Extreme, like the Maximus Apex nowadays that they are using tonight. And although the memory side, it used to do a lot of DDR3, so passed on the previous generation, but you have some decent score on DDR4 as well. So as we say, that's the performance matters, and this event is all about making sure that these guys can, try to do the best with the CPU they have. They used to have, they used to all be benching, but now they are just all drying up to restart and be pushing for the next hour in trying to get an even higher score than that. If we take a short look at what was happening just earlier today, we had about 5.5 gigahertz on the 14-core CPU by Wizerty, so the Core i9-7940X, and that was around, if I'm right, if I remember correctly, 45.21 points in Cinebench, or 11.5. Then we moved to BenchBros, which was using the Intel Core i9-7960X, so 16-core, 32-thread. The Cinebench score was about 46 something, but that was at 4.2 gigahertz. And then we moved to Smoke, that was at 5 gigahertz on the 18-core, the Core i9-7980XE, and it was like, oh yeah, I just do 49.25 points, just at 5 gigahertz. So it's good to see that the increase of number of cores actually just increased the score as well, which is a highly multi-threaded benchmark, which is what Cinebench is all about. If we take that score of 49 points by Smoke on the 36 thread CPU, if we take that 17 years ago, that was 1 core, 1 thread, and like below 6 points, and that was the highest one you can get. That's I mean, over the past 17 years, we blew up the scores, we blew up the number of cores. Of course, that took a good 7 years to jump off from the 4 thread up to 8 thread, so dual core to first quad cores architectures, and it took 2 more years before going to 12 core, and from that it took 4 more years before going to 16 cores, and obviously for the past 3 years we went 16 thread, 20 thread, 36 thread nowadays. So for this week, that's the CPU are just released on the market, and the 7980XE is just the fastest CPU we can get as a consumer. So speaking of BenchBros, we had at the same time we met Wizerty 2 years ago. We had the chance to meet him as well, to ask him basically the exact same question we asked Wizerty. So you had Wizerty #1 in France, and now we have BenchBros number 5th in Germany. Let's take a look.
I'm Andy, and my nickname on HWBOT is BenchBros, and I'm from Germany. And yeah, that's all. No?
Team?
Team. My team is HWBOT. It's a big German hardware review site, and I invented the team back in 2007 or something. And my job is I'm an electrical engineer, so I studied electrical stuff. And yeah, now I'm an ASIC designer, so it means application-specific integrated circuit. So my job is really close to my hobby, so doing some digital design on some silicon chips. And I start overclocking maybe around back in 2006 or something. And yeah, the reason was that I was playing really hard Counter-Strike at this time. And yeah, other guys had more frames during gaming, and I want to push my system to increase the frame rates to have a better aiming and stuff. And yeah, that's why I started overclocking. And at some point, not only the gaming was the reason to push further, even to know what the system can do. So typical background, I think many of the overclockers start with gaming and then want to see the frame rates going higher. Yeah, my best moment in my overclocking career so far was maybe in 2010 in January. There was an overclocking summit in Taipei, and this was the first time I went to Taipei, and MSI invited me to collect some new ideas for a new overclocking motherboard. It was great to be first time here, and yeah, also 2011 MOA fourth place was worldwide was great. And of course, last year AOC champion together with Dan Kopp was also a big moment, and several nice world records we did. Yeah, to compare the overclocker scene today it's quite different compared to 5 years ago. It's getting more and more competitive, so you really push too hard and doing some backup stuff and yeah, some dirty talk around our back. It's not, I don't like it that much. So back in the days overclocking was just for fun and yeah, pushing the system and also always uploading the best score. World records are there to be beaten. But yeah, today you would just upload the nearest score to the actual current world record and then wait until someone beat your score and then upload your backups. I don't like it. So it's much more competitive these days. Yeah, in the next 5 years, I think I see it in Germany. So the amount of overclockers, especially doing extreme overclocking on LN2, it's going down. So there are not many people doing this. So when it comes to extreme overclocking, I think the number of extreme overclockers will decrease, but maybe the gaming and overclocking boards are getting more important because some gamers always ask us which board they should choose. So yeah, maybe that could be in 5 years, no idea. My message to young overclockers. Yeah, just try on air cooling and water cooling and try to learn the system and try to push, and then maybe get in touch with some more professional overclockers and organizing some session together and to learn more and more. And yeah, then when you first meet up with the extreme overclocking, the step to dryers or LN2 cooling is not that far. So they can learn a lot from guys doing extreme overclocking, and yeah, so that's my advice to get in touch with more advanced overclocker and learn from them and not learning our stuff alone. It will take much longer. Yeah, Taipei is a quite nice city. It's really hot. Last time I've been here is November and January, so it's the first time Computex for me. So it's really hot, but yeah, I like the people. I like it to be not at home. It's not right, but here I can stay focused. No social life. So benching all day long, it's quite nice. And yeah, and on Wednesday I will have some sightseeing and to learn the city a little bit more, and we will see what's happening.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Performance Matters here, the madness, the multi-core madness Moscow. We are here in Moscow, and that's insane. We have a Wizerty, BenchBros, and Smoke overclocking the latest CPU from Intel, the Intel Core i9-7940X, the 7960X, and the 7980XE. These guys are overclocking the CPU, well, just casually with liquid nitrogen, just like this for fun. And I'm being joined for this live by Buildzoid and Houston. How are you guys are doing as of now?
It's great. Awesome.
Perfect. And so far we have seen quite a lot of things going on. We have seen Wizerty hitting up to 5.5 gigahertz, hitting a good above 40 points score in Cinebench, and that was just with the 14 core. We moved on to BenchBros that was 16 core, and it was like 200 megahertz below that, and still hitting a higher score, close to 45 points. And then let's focus nowadays now on Smoke, which is from Russia. So it's #1 in Russia, is very well placed in the world as well. And tonight he's playing with the i9-7980XE, the Extreme Edition Core X CPU from Intel. And so, Buildzoid, what is going on? Why is he moving the window like this?
I don't know. Maybe he's waiting for it to crash. I mean, that's usually what I like. I think it looks like they might be pulling the system down. So you'd basically do that just to check that it didn't freeze up on you. I had a not so fun experience with that on X99 once, where I was like, yeah, let's find the cold bug, and I was expecting it to black screen, but it cold bugged, and I still had the screen running, so I thought it was, you know, still fine. And so I pulled it down like 20 or maybe 30 degrees too far before I realized that, hey, it actually froze up. It's not running. And yeah, so they're probably just pulling down temperatures, and you need to move the windows around, or you won't notice when the system stops working.
Of course, you need 18-core CPU to do that. Houston, as it's your first live talking about extreme overclocking, how would you explain what is the issue that Buildzoid described, the cold bug? How would you describe that?
From what I've learned, the CPU just stops functioning after it gets too cold. Essentially, either won't boot, or it's almost similar to when it gets too hot. From what I've been hearing, the thing will just lock up and it won't function anymore.
Well, and we're talking about extremely cold temperature right here. Buildzoid, what are the temperature that usually the CPU will stop working because it's too cold? Because there are not tests for that.
So skylake-x and X99, and like just sort of high-end desktop chips for that use the fully integrated voltage regulator, they sort of freeze out between, some of them, like say Broadwell E froze out between sort of -90 and -80, but most of them would freeze out around -90. And then Haswell E before that was around -110. And skylake-x is very similar to Haswell E in that it also freezes out around -110 degrees. So, yeah.
Well, that's a good challenge to have. Like, oh, my CPU is too cold, so it's just looking up for like a safety features. And as you say, like for overheating, there are features all built in the CPUs. And as a matter of fact, the guys from HWBOT during the HWBOT World Tour, they were giving workshop, and they had like more than 800 people doing the training and basically just overclocking the CPUs. And those safety features always worked. I never saw any of these features failing on me. So it's quite interesting to see that even though you want to try to push it even at your place without liquid nitrogen, well, there's going to be features for that at some point.
Actually, so funny thing is, on X299 I don't believe you'll run into an issue, but if you go like for low-end motherboards from some manufacturers, safety features cost more money than they think they're worth implementing. So,
well,
yeah.
Obviously that's not going to be the case here with the Maximus 6 Apex, because that's the top of the
like, I think
not at all.
X299 is far too, like, the entire platform is just like far too expensive for any manufacturer, and far too like this platform is far too stress. Like it's you know, it's an enthusiast platform. You can't really cut corners on something like this. I was talking more like, you know, you get those motherboards in that sort of $100 and lower range where it's like, you know what, maybe we just won't include this safety feature.
Okay, so that's
they don't expect the user to actually end up doing like any overclocking on those motherboards. It's like, yeah, it's technically listed in the feature list, but it's not properly supported. So, yeah.
That's definitely not an issue we have here. Smoke finally launched Cinebench, Cinebench R11.5. So it will be tweaking the system. As far as of now, is at 4 GHz, and it just set 5 GHz, so 50 multiplier, and it will run Cinebench along with CPU-Z open. So that way we'll be able to see the frequency.
Man, so
1.5 volt of cache voltage. Of course, guys, I mean, you can try that at home, but that's not gonna work because here it's under liquid nitrogen. And why do you stop? It's just doing a test run.
Like, he's been having issues with that system like all day, hasn't he? Like they had it at one point, it was stuck at 1.2 gigahertz, which I don't know if they had slow mode on or something like that and just forgot about it.
I think it was just going for smoke and just leave it like this. Literally going for smoke. Are they gonna do trying to? Oh, you have a validation at 5.7 gigahertz.
Ooh.
Yeah, look that in the folder. So it did. So that's the first time they have this OS and this platform. So it did 5.7 gigahertz. He's going for the maximum frequency right here. So let's guys focus on that. So it's 55 multipliers. So that's gonna be 5.5 gigahertz of CPU on all 18 cores. So for this to be valid, it have to be all the cores at once.
I think they're. Did they not raise the voltage yet? Are they still at 1.5? That seems a bit low for a max frequency run.
See, it's already at 5.8. It's 5.8. That's it. Oh, no, still going. Still going. Oh my God, that's 18 core at 5.8 gigahertz. That's insane.
Wow.
Okay, do you think it can go over 6?
Yeah, until you try to run a benchmark.
Right.
It's like the funny thing I find is like the CPU-Z validations is like, I mean, okay, so you have a really high frequency screenshot, and the whole restriction to keeping it on 18 cores is like, well, you still can't run it. You know, it's like if I disable all the cores, it's still useless. If I don't disable all the cores, it's still not going to be runnable. But it is very like, it does give you a rough idea of like where the chip absolutely tops out.
Oh, yeah. If 5.9 did not pass, so they are gonna have to start again. So yeah, as you say, Buildzoid, it's like even though that's the maximum frequency is always maximum frequency, it's not the maximum usable frequency, which is when the benchmark can be running, and that's
and actually you'll see that max frequency varies from benchmark to benchmark. So like, there's benchmarks which, because they're shorter, you can run them at higher clocks because you have less time in which you just have less time in which they can make an error. And there's like, so you basically, if you're overclocking on liquid nitrogen, a lot of the time you'll be dialing in frequencies for every benchmark individually. So there's a lot of benchmarks you can just run at higher frequencies than all the other ones because they use different parts of the chip, or they just put less strain on the chip, or they run faster so you don't have the heat output for that long, and so they don't crash as much on you. Then like, yeah, so ultimately like max frequency, in the extreme scene, it really depends on like what you're doing with it, what your max frequency is. So you'll have a lot of the time you'll have people talking about, oh yeah, I need a CPU that does X frequency for 3D Mark, which is a completely like that's a completely different requirement than saying I need a CPU that does X in Cinebench.
That is something similar you do have, Houston, at work. I mean, you want to have the platform to be stable for one specific kind of workload, or a set of specific kind of workload, like Premiere and so on, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So how did that work when you build a system, either at work for yourself, when you want to do the testing?
I'm not sure the question.
So how do you make sure
Right.
that everything is running correctly before you ship that to clients?
So our install department will, when it comes to overclocking, we can specify a particular range. I think the last time I saw it, we were doing 4.3 to 4.5, and so our install department will run through. I do believe it's Cinebench, Furmark, and Prime 95. To make sure that it'll last and I believe they do for about an hour or so a piece.
Okay, that's a nice process to have. So we can see that Smoke is benching the 18 cores of the 7980XE CPU. There was a question on live chat. So what kind of power supply do they use? They use the Seasonic Prime 1200 watt power supply, and these power supply have been quite powerful to support this, even the 18 core platform. Keep in mind, guys, that we are here talking about a special overclocking, extreme overclocking setup. And along with Seasonic PSUs, we had the Asus Republic of Gamer, which is the Maximus 6 Apex board that are being used right here, and along with some HyperX SSD and memory. What is important is that the power, like those CPU are power hungry in terms of extreme overclocking. That's on the high end, but quite reasonable on what you can get when you build a regular PC. But when you actually just get this this extreme overclocking going on, and we have 18 cores at more than 5 gigahertz, that's insane. I mean, it's 1.3 volts right now. It's not even the default one, which is even lower than that. And I mean, 18 core, 4 gigahertz almost by default, like 4.2 and 4.4. When you go higher in the voltages, that's just gonna increase like hell. So, Houston, do you think we can see 6 gigahertz tonight?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not on the XE processor, but I think the other two guys might actually reach it.
We'll be able to see that maybe if the guys manage it, we'll be able to switch onto their screen after that. So
it'll be really exciting to see if anybody breaks 6 gigahertz. So that's amazing.
So Smoke is Smoke is going back.
Smoke has so far been using very low voltages for his max frequency run. Like 1.5, I know for actual benchmarking, you wouldn't really want to go over, like, you don't, with the X299 CPUs, you don't really push very, very high voltage for benchmarks, because once you load up all 18 of those cores, they get extremely hot. But for max frequency validation, I'm surprised they haven't pushed the voltage higher yet. So I think they have because they already validated 5.8. And so I would not be surprised that if in a few hundred millivolts more, they might not be doing 6.
And one thing as well is, like, when you push that much voltages and things into the CPU, like 18 times that, I mean, the more frequency you have and the more voltage you have, that's gonna be even hotter in the end, right? So if you have like 18 times that more heat that is going to be removed from the liquid nitrogen and all that, that's insane. Just a slight increase will have like enormous consequences.
Mm-hmm. You'd almost have to cool the cables at that point.
So yeah, it seems that just doing it with the flask was not good enough anymore. So Smoke is restarting the system, but we have BenchBros that is benching at 5.5 gigahertz on the 17960X. So he's benching GPU Pi, but on the CPU. So Buildzoid, what is this GPU Pi doing?
So GPU Pi is a OpenCL benchmark, and it basically calculates the number pi to very many digits. I think right now he has it on 1 billion digits of pi. And it is a multi-threaded benchmark, so it actually benefits from all the extra cores that a 7960X has. And yeah, basically it's a test to see how quickly you can calculate 1 billion digits of the number pi.
Yeah, thanks. We had some information that it might be doing some XTU very soon, so I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I guess he's using this as just a pre-test for XTU because XTU is really heavy and punishing in terms of load for systems.
I mean, 1.35 volt as well at 5.5 gigahertz. It's not that high.
Yeah, liquid nitrogen does it well. Actually, I don't think the CPU-Z might not be reading voltages correctly. Like, a lot of the software monitoring just sort of stops working. We'll have to see his Turbo V core settings if he opens them up.
So let's try to see, is he going to do XTU? Oh, he's going back to tweaking, so he's at 5.5 gigahertz. And if we look at the settings, so he's gonna do... But he's just changing the first one, he's not changing all of them. He's just changing the first core frequency. Oh, he's gonna be saving the screenshot for validation, I guess. So we are a good 2 hours into this coverage. We saw Smoke with the 18 core trying very hard. We are seeing BenchBros saving score for later use, and we do have Wizerty that is back after cleaning up his mess, I would say, because that's the madness here. Too much power, too much LN2, too much condensation. He's back into the system. He's now going to be benching R11.5, and I don't know what the frequency is at. Oh. So Wizerty #1 in France, 14th in the world in the Elite League, is benching the 7940X. It's just oh, they changed. So now he's using the 18 core CPU now. So see, that's the thing. They changed the CPU. That's why they stopped. So now it's Wizerty is having the 7980XE CPU, and is at 5.5 gigahertz. So it's more than what we saw before. Oh no, that's the 16 core. This is getting me confused now.
No, it's the 18 core. It's the 18 core. It has the golden identifier.
Oh yeah, so that's the 18 core. Definitely. So just gonna check the score. 54.98 points. That's the highest we have seen tonight. That's insane. I mean, if we take a look at the graph that we had about in the beginning of the show, and I mean 10 years ago we were basically at like 2 points. Like 17 years ago at 2 points, and then 10 years ago we were at below 8 points. We had to wait 2009 to actually go over 15 points. And last year in 2016 with the 6950X, we were pretty close to 30 points, and now we are like way higher than that. So 54 points. That's insane.
Wow.
Right. What is happening here? Like Houston, for someone that have no clue what's going on, what do you think is happening right now?
My mind's just blown by this. I keep looking back at some of the default scores that we've been getting from Cinebench and seeing this, and this is just incredible to see these single processors are dominating the scores that are usually you see from like dual Xeon at 22 cores, 14 core dual Xeon machines. I don't know what to say.
You're speechless, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Very useful for life.
I'm sorry, but yeah, this is just mind-blowing. It's amazing.
So we have Wizerty now in XTU. Buildzoid, what is XTU for anyone that just joined us here on the Twitch Overclocking TV channel?
So XTU is a basically all-in-one overclocking utility from Intel. It works only on Intel systems. It includes a benchmark, a stress test, and it gives you access to basically all the CPU settings that you need to set up a basic CPU overclock. So you can control power limits, ratios, voltages, and yeah, it's a nice little all-in-one utility for Intel platforms.
And then do you use that quite often?
No. I generally, I use either the motherboard utilities because they generally give you because they're made by the motherboard vendors, they tend to include some motherboard specific features, which XTU being a general usage utility, it doesn't always have all the extras settings that something like, say, Asus Turbo V Core, which we can see on the screen right now, has. And then the other thing is it doesn't give you access to memory settings pretty much at all. So you have to do all of that from the BIOS. So I ultimately do, when I'm doing a system, I configure the memory and some base settings from the base voltages, base clocks, and memory settings, all from the BIOS. Then once I get into the operating system, I use something like Turbo V Core to go further.
Yeah, that's insane. So we have Wizerty now playing with the 18-core CPU. This is the highest core count CPU you can get on the consumer market. And what's he doing? Why is he using the torch now, Buildzoid?
So it looks like he pulled the system too far down in temperature, and that caused it to cold bug and subsequently drop below the cold boot bug as well. So now he needs to warm up the system or it just won't start, as the CPU is too cold to function.
Wow, that's quite a thing. And on the other side of the venue, we have Smoke that is back at trying to get the 18-core past 6 gigahertz. Maybe we can have a look at that. He's at 1.2 gigahertz now, and we have 60 multipliers set up in the Turbo V Core. Oh, okay, let's see if that's gonna work. Let's see if we can do it. 1.55 volt manual voltage here. Is he looking for something?
No, he's just preparing it to validate as soon as he pulls out slow mode to give the system very little time to crash.
Okay, so what is happening here, Buildzoid? What is happening on the screen?
So he's dialing in his settings for the CPU clock. And he has it set to 59, so it'll do 5.9 gigahertz. But right now I assume he has slow mode turned on, and basically slow mode is a switch on the motherboard that forces the CPU to the lowest possible clock, which is very useful if you don't want your system to basically pull a ton of power and potentially crash just idling. So yeah, it's basically a trick to maintain stability until that moment that you actually need a performance.
So we just can't wait to see when we switch it off. Okay, switch it, dude. Switch it.
Yeah, I don't know what he's.
Well, just kind of holding our breath.
Going for. Is he?
Oh, I know, it crashed.
Going for it, or
it crashed. That's too bad. Sometimes that's happening. BenchBros is it's stuck at 5 gigahertz, benching on Cinebench or 11.5, and is still using the 7960X, while Wizerty is having some condensation troubles again with the 18-core CPU, that's something very interesting, that the 14-core, 16-core, and 18-core CPU, so the 7940X, 60X, and 80XE, don't overclock the same, actually, from what we can see. There's something as well that
it's not that surprising considering that there's like the 14-core. There is, it's not that big a difference. It's only plus 2 cores every time, but it does increase the heat output a pretty significant amount. So it's not that surprising that they're hitting various frequencies. And then there's obviously just the variance chip from chip to chip. If you buy 10 7940Xs, they're not all going to clock the same. So it's really like with a small sample size of CPUs like this, it's kind of hard to judge.
There's also something that is going on, is that we will see more and more per core tuning of the different CPUs in the next in the upcoming few weeks and months, basically, as these high core count CPUs are definitely something new to look at. Before that, we were just pushing all the cores to the same frequency, and nowadays we might have some tuning to adjust for it. So we do have BenchBros screen, and is at 5.4 gigahertz. It's going to do W prime, which is a very lightweight benchmark, which is actually so the CPUs are so actually powerful that it will just take a few seconds to do it. I mean, Houston, do you have any kind of how could you relate to that, as the benchmark is so short because the CPU is too powerful? Like, okay, so what's next then? We're gonna test the benchmark coding system? See, it's like 1.3 seconds.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure the software side of it, how it works. So I'm not sure.
We saw as well that these CPU like the 7980XE, especially clocked so high like this, it's it's insane, because sometimes we have some benchmark that we used to bench before that are actually taking more time to spread the load over the different threads than actually running the workload anymore, which is not something we have with the production system that you guys use at work, Houston.
Right. Okay.
See, it's like not even 2 seconds.
That's amazing.
So BenchBros is still doing a W prime less than 2 seconds. There's not much going on here. That's a very short benchmark, not very extremely visible as well. But if we look at Wizerty, that is back with the Core i9-7980XE CPU, so it dropped the 14 core. It says, okay, I did everything I can with the 7940X. I want to try the 18 core. I want to try the 7980XE. Guys, that's the first time Wizerty is having that CPU in his hand. That's the first time ever. So he's at 5.4 gigahertz, if I'm correct, almost 5.5 gigahertz, and it will be running the Cinebench R15, which is a different kind of workload. But previous generation CPUs, even with 10 cores, were barely passing by the 2000 mark. Let's see if that's gonna work. All right, run,
go.
run.
It looks like it might be broken.
Just do it. Yeah, it's running. Oh my god, so many workloads.
You can actually see in the side there, he has the
5,300
monitoring, and you can see that the CPU is actually hitting positive temperatures.
Wow.
Which is absolutely insane. Because like you could like that the LN2 pot he's just showing right now, it is at is that minus 150 or
negative 150, which is very good for this kind of CPUs.
80. He has it at minus 90. So, and he run like, yeah, he has it almost at minus 100, and he runs starts the benchmark, and the CPU manages to push the temperatures all the way to positive. Wow. So that's an insane amount of heat output.
I'm shocked to see how fast it's going through this Cinebench mark. Usually when we run this stuff, it takes a few minutes, 15 minutes or so to finish that build out. And here it is in less than 10. It's 10 seconds. That's amazing.
That's insane. So see, he's using XTU to adjust the voltage, which is a different strategy from what Smoke and BenchBros used. So he's back at it in a Cinebench R15. This like those core are insane. Like honestly, I'm blown away. 5.6. Actually, he's benching at 5.6. Smokes were stuck at 5.7 on the maximum frequencies thing, and he's now Wizard is benching at 5.6. Well, he was benching because it just crashed.
And he's crashing at 5.6.
Oh.
Oh my god, that's crazy. So for anyone that just joined on the show, we are here at the Performance Matters Multicore Madness Moscow, and we just saw Wizerty, which is currently #1 in France and 14th now in the worldwide. He used to be actually. He went second in the worldwide ranking in 2014. That was right after some of the overclocking competition that were happening there. Is from France, as I said. He used to overclock the 7940X, which is the 14-core CPU. He got a lot of things out of it, so a good 5.6 GHz, if I remember correctly. And he's now playing with the 17980XE, which is, well, the highest core count CPU you can get. Back into XU. I mean, let's focus on him. I mean, he's doing very well. He's one of the guys to get one of the best score tonight on the 18-core CPU from Intel, the Intel Core i9 17980XE CPU. This live commentary is provided to you by Buildzoid.
So he's pulling down, and yeah, so this is something I've also always done for the higher core count chips, is when you're running Cinebench, what you do is you put your cursor right over the run button, and you pull the CPU down, and as you're pouring, and once it hits the temperature you want to start at, that's when you hit the run button. And that basically makes sure that, you know, like, there's no delay between the CPU starting to load up and you starting to pour. Which gives you slightly better temperature control, especially on chips like this, where like these things are hitting positive temperatures under load. It's like you have to, you absolutely have to do something to make sure the temperatures are under control. So that's just one technique. Like, you basically sit the system, pull down, and just run as soon as it hits the temperature you want.
So I got an update on the score from Wiz, and actually from all of the guys. So I will just queue through it in the next few minutes. But Wizerty here, you see, is like sitting down, and it's like kind of like playing a game, but you're playing not as a skill for the game, but as a skill for finding what is the perfect settings that you need to apply for the system to go on. Guys, before I tell you the exact score that's going on. Houston, do you have any? Are you so mind blown that you can't even remember any scores, or what kind of score do you remember so far?
I think someone was just saying about 5372. I think that was Wizerty, and I was just looking, and that dominates our Dual Xeon 22 core results in Cinebench. And that's stock, of course, but like one single processor at what is that? 4 cores less at a much higher frequency, but still, like, that's amazing.
That's crazy. All right, Wizerty is benching very hard, and if we can get a screen, we will be able to get his last update on the score as well. So he's trying to almost soon to bench Cinebench R11.5.
Come on.
And it crashed again. The ultimate test of patience. It's really like with extreme overclocking, it's really best if you're not on a competition and you're just testing out, it's really nice that you can just sort of, you know, bench and relax. So it's like, oh, I crashed. Oh, well, let's restart. Oh, you know, pull it back up. Because it's like the system isn't gonna really like do any better if you try to rush anything, and in fact, if you start rushing it, you're just gonna make more mistakes, and is actually gonna end up going worse.
All
so
right.
You know, with extreme overclocking, like basically, you need to have a lot of patience, because you're going to be seeing stuff crash over and over and over again. And you know, with the 18 core running Cinebench, it's not too bad, because the benchmark doesn't take that long. So even if you crash it right as it almost finishes, you know, it's not that much time lost. It's a lot more annoying when you're benching something like, say, SuperPi, which is a single core benchmark which takes forever. And you know, you crash in like after 4 minutes. of basically running that benchmark, it just crashes on you. It's just, that is really, really frustrating. So it is very much a test of patience.
All right, I think we're approaching the end of this night, and we do have the last update of the scores. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in tonight for the Performance Matters event, the Multicore Madness Moscow. Let's have a quick recap of the scores that we were able to catch up on the streams. Let's start with the Core i9 7940X, so the 14-core 28-thread CPU from Intel, from the new Core X series. We had Wizerty, first overclocker in France, very good, high ranked in the world. He's actually 14th. He's in the Elite League, and he managed to do Cinebench R15. He did 42.24 point, which is a very nice score for that. It was about, if I remember correctly, about 5.3 gigahertz or 5.4 gigahertz at that frequency. He managed to do an XTU score of 4430, which is by far the highest XTU score I saw over the past week, and those CPU are just out for like 4 days. Houston, are you mind blown?
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? I mean, if you take the G3258, which was an unlocked dual-core, very low-end and very low-power CPU, that one do like 300, 400, maybe 500 if you overclock it correctly. Like this one is like blowing everything out of the water. It's 4430. It's just insane on just 14 cores. On R11.5, he managed to do 45.42 points, and that's exactly the one we were able to see on the live at the very beginning of the evening. And switching to the 7960X, which was overclocked by BenchBros, which is from Germany, currently 5th in Germany, 67th in the world, but still very active overclocker all around, and very relaxed and very positive person as well. Very interesting to have him around the event. He managed to do on the 16 core, so the 7960X Core i9 from Intel, he managed to do 49.8 points, which is a little bit higher than the 14 cores, but it was at a lower frequency. If we remember correctly, that was about 5.25 gigahertz for this one. So you can see that the increase of cores and the increase, even with a little bit lower frequency, you can still get into multi-threaded benchmarks some improvement in the things. He is now benching only W prime and GPU Pi, just because he had condensation on his platform. Of course, the guys use liquid nitrogen, so condensation is one of the issue you can run into, and yet condensation in one of the RAM slot, which is extremely difficult to get off. You have to remove the complete waters on the platform as well. So it takes a lot of times, and you just say, okay, I'm just gonna bet something else that doesn't require all the memories for me. All right, and if we tune into the 7980XE, so the Core i9 18 core 36-thread CPU from Intel. This one we managed to see a 4.8 gigahertz validation by Smoke on his system, of course using the Asus ROG Apex motherboard, so the Maximus 6 Apex motherboard, and powered by the Seasonic 1200 watt PSU from Seasonic. And Wizerty was like, I had this 14 core, I want to get more now. So Wizerty went and just not stole the CPU from from Smoke, but just got another 18 core CPU, so the 7980XE CPU. He managed to do on Cinebench R15, get that, 5,395 points. That's just like, that's just insane. That's, I mean, on the 14 core, he was managing to do like 4,200, and now it's like, yeah, just gonna 5,300 on the next one. That's crazy. That's crazy. And it looks like to us, as of today, of tonight, it looks like the 18 core is actually clocking higher than the 14 and the 16 core so far. So we managed to see Wizerty benching at 5.5 gigahertz, almost 5.6 gigahertz. It was always trying and still trying live to do that. And Cinebench R11.5, it was at 55.98 point on the 7980XE. Like, those scores are just mind-blowing. This is truly madness here tonight. I mean, Houston, when we hear about those scores, like what comes up to your mind?
I mean, the best score that I know is 5299 from a Xeon E5 2699 at 2.2 gigahertz. So, I mean, we're clocking double frequency and with 6 cores less. 4 cores less.
Yeah, 4 cores less.
That's amazing.
That's insane. Buildzoid, what comes up to your mind when you see these kind of cores?
I mean, it's insane. You know, it's like I've never really looked at the workstation space, so I don't really have a point of comparison other than say a 6950X, and that just sort of like maxed out, stopped below 3,000 points. So it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, even myself, I'm mind blown. I hope we will be able to get the overclockers. And actually, someone is telling me that yes, we might be able to get them. So we just need to take a short break, and we're gonna come back from the Performance Matters. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Stay here. We're just gonna take a short break, get the guys in, and talk to them and about their experience about the little CPU. This was the Performance Matters. Even here, the Multicore Madness Moscow. Thank you very much for tuning in. Stay tuned. That's gonna be continuing right after the break. Thank you, Houston. Thank you, Buildzoid. And until the next segment, keep pushing it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Performance Matters Multicore Madness Moscow. Here, I'm Trouffman from OverClocking-TV, and we had the chance to get some of the guests with us. I mean, BenchBros, Andy, welcome here. Nicely done. So, you're based in Germany. You were actually top 5 actually in Germany as well, ranked 67th as of 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Basically, like just quickly, like what are you doing in life? I mean, is that your full-time job to do overclocking like this?
No, I'm working for Carl Zeiss in my hometown Jena. So overclocking is just a kind of hobby or a professional hobby for me. And yes, I just spend my free time with overclocking.
How much time do you spend to do overclocking per week?
Yeah, I'm in the hobby like 10 years ago. I started overclocking, and of course at the beginning you have to spend a lot of time to doing the hobby and raising the rankings. And but yeah, the last days or weeks I can't spend so much time on the hobby. So family and small son, and the job is also very important because I cannot earn a lot of money with overclocking.
But so still you're still very decent at this, and you still take the time to come here for this special event.
Sure.
That's very nice. Actually, I heard you were on vacation, right?
Yeah, I was in France the last week on family vacation. I skipped the last 2 days to come over here from Moscow, and I will meet my wife and my son back in Berlin. So
so that's your end of vacation now. You're gonna have to go to work on Monday.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's gonna be interesting. So you were using the Intel Core i9-7960X, so which is the 16-core 32-thread CPU. How did that turn out? Was that the first time you were playing with it?
Yeah, it was the first time I touched this kind of CPU. I played a lot with the 10-core. But the latest generation is quite different. 16 cores is a lot of multi-thread power, and so it was quite nice to test it, and hopefully I can put my hand on the 18 core as well later that day.
So you plan on benching all night or tonight?
It depends, but maybe I will do.
Maybe back at the hotel.
No, in the hotel, but let's see what's going on here late night.
Oh, cool. Actually, you were staying on the 16 core all night long. So how does that started for you in the very beginning? Because as you say, that's the first time you had this CPU in hand. What is your approach to get into knowing this kind of hardware that you never had the experience before?
It was much more difficult than I thought, because it was also the first touch on the Asus Apex. So new CPU, no motherboard, new motherboard, and when you touch a platform for the first time, it's always really hard, especially when some guys walking around and want to do some live show and show the Russian media what to do and what is the hardware about, and you have no idea.
Well, that was
not really no idea, but yes, it's from scratch with the new board. Was not that easy, but at the end it turns out really well. But I was just limited by the CPU, so it was just a random picked sample. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's as you said, that was the first time you had the CPU in hand as well. Did you discuss with some of your fellow overclockers before coming here? So, hey, what should I change? What should I do?
Yeah. One of my best friends, Denkop, is really used to the Apex, so he just gave me some hints and some settings. Just load this profile and set this voltage. I just make a small note and did it that way, but for the 16 cores this was not one-to-one applicable, but yes, it was at the end it was okay.
Well, that's quite interesting that you still turn out to do some decent score. What was the maximum frequency you were able to reach tonight?
I didn't test CPU set frequency. I just ran Cinebench all night long, and it was close to 5.5. So
on 16 core enable.
On 16 core enable, yeah, sure. So Cinebench is multi-thread benchmark, and yeah.
So what was, as you say, you played with the 10 core from the skylake-x family, you played with the 10 core from like the previous family as well, the 6950X. And what was your first reaction when you run Cinebench? So you run Cinebench like, oh yeah, that's gonna be running. I was like, oh my god, isn't it?
Yeah, it was quite excited because Cinebench just separated the ray tracing image in different parts. And the first time I saw 32 threads, and of course there are 32 little squares rendering the picture, and this is quite interesting. And of course it takes not that much time to finish the rendering. So
it's like one of the fastest Cinebench you ever saw.
Yes, probably yes.
All right, so you're gonna try to get your hand on one of these 18 core CPU to play with. So far tonight you used the platform that was Intel Core i9 17960X, so 16 core, 32 thread. Used the Asus Maximus ROG Apex motherboard, so Maximus 6 Apex motherboard. You are working Seasonic 1200 watts Prime PSU as well to deliver all the power for that, and that was like a HyperX and memory and SSD as well. So that was quite a nice setup, and the bump into the top score was quite impressive. I mean, I was expecting to see over 5 GHz CPUs tonight, but 5.5 on the 16 core was like, well, that deserves some respect. So, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the interview, and enjoy the upcoming 18 cores that you might have. Maybe.
I'm impressed that Wizerty is finished in time.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna try to get Wizerty next, so we're just gonna take a short break right after this.
I'm Andy, and my nickname on HWBOT is BenchBros, and I'm from Germany, and yeah, that's all. No?
Team?
Team. My team is HWBOT. It's a big German hardware review site, and I invented the team back in 2007 or something. And my job is I'm an electrician engineer, so I studied electrician stuff, and yeah, now I'm an ASIC designer, so it means application-specific integrated circuit. So my job is really close to my hobby, so doing some digital design on some silicon chips. And I started overclocking maybe around back in 2006 or something. And yeah, the reason was that I was playing really hard Counter-Strike at this time, and yeah, other guys had more frames during gaming, and I want to push my system to increase the frame rates to have a better aiming and stuff. And yeah, that's why I started overclocking, and at some point not only the gaming was the reason to push further, even to know what the system can do. So typical background, I think many of the overclockers start with gaming and then want to see the frame rates going higher. Yeah, my best moment in my overclocking career so far was maybe in 2010 in January. There was an overclocking summit in Taipei, and this was the first time I went to Taipei, and MSI invited me to collect some new ideas for a new overclocking motherboard. It was great to be first time here, and yeah, also 2011 MOA fourth place was worldwide was great, and of course last year AOC champion together with Dan Kopp was also a big moment, and several nice world records we did. Yeah, to compare the overclocker scene today is, yeah, it's quite different compared to 5 years ago. It's getting more and more competitive, so you really push too hard and doing some backup stuff and yeah, some dirty talk around our back. It's not, I don't like it that much. So back in the days it was, overclocking was just for fun and yeah, pushing the system and also always uploading the best score. Just yeah, world records are there to be beaten. But yeah, today you would just upload the nearest score to the actual current world record, and then wait until someone beat your score and then upload your backups. I don't like it. So it's much more competitive these days. Yeah, in the next 5 years, I think I see it in Germany. So the amount of overclockers, especially doing extreme overclocking on LN2, it's going down. So there are not many people doing this. So when it comes to extreme overclocking, I think more, the number of extreme overclockers will decrease, but maybe the gaming and overclocking boards are getting more important because some gamers always ask us which board they should choose. So yeah, maybe that could be in 5 years, no idea. My message to young overclockers. Yeah, just try on air cooling and water cooling and try to learn the system and try to push, and then maybe get in touch with some more professional overclockers and organizing some session together and to learn more and more. And yeah, then when you first meet up with the extreme overclocking, the step to dryers or LN2 cooling is not that far. So they can learn a lot from guys doing extreme overclocking, and yeah, so that's my advice to get in touch with more advanced overclocker and learn from them, and not learning our stuff alone. It will take much longer. Yeah, Taipei is a quite nice city. It's really hot. Last time I've been here is November and January, so it's the first time Computex for me. So it's really hot, but yeah, I like the people. I like it to be not at home. It's not right, but here I can stay focused. Not no social life. So benching all day long, it's quite nice. And yeah, and on Wednesday I will have some sightseeing and to learn the city a little bit more, and we will see what's happening.
Welcome back everyone to the Performance Matters Multicore Madness Moscow. I'm Trouffman from OverClocking-TV, and we are right after all the overclockers in the venue tried to overclock the 14, 16 and 18 core CPU from the Core X series from Intel. tonight I have the chance to have my fellow Frenchman, Wizerty, right
Hi,
on the
guys.
live here. How are you doing, man?
I'm fine, thanks.
A little bit tired, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. A little bit tired, but really happy to be there for the Performance Matter event.
Oh, that's good. I mean, you did very well tonight. You had the 14-core CPU, so the Core i9-7940X.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you had the CPU in hand?
Yes, exactly. It was the first time. At the beginning, I was a bit...
That was like just 24 hours ago that you got the CPU for the first time.
Yeah, no, the CPU was like 4 hours ago. Yeah.
Oh, that CPU was 4 hours ago. Oh, yeah, that's very well done then.
Yeah, and motherboard was 1 day ago. Yeah.
Well done. So how was it with the platform that you just had like this?
The first stage was a bit difficult because when you don't know the rig at all, it's not really easy. But after 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, you start to know it well, let's say, and you start to have fun, and it's a really nice platform.
So far, what was your strategy to bench the 14-core CPU?
As always, you start with a V-core, like a decent V-core, like 1.4 for example. You start to find the max frequency with this voltage, and then you start to increase voltage, try to push memory frequency more, and so on until you hit the power target or the limitation of the rig.
Okay,
I'm not quite finished, kiddo. Just said it here.
Oh yeah, actually, there's a question from Skype.
Yes.
So Houston from Pod System, what's your question for Wizerty?
My question would be, what was some of the challenge with having this a brand new platform like this and never having? So you have experience in the past with it. What applies to something brand new like this?
Well, can you explain quickly?
So, like the platform is completely new.
Yeah.
You didn't know it. What was the biggest challenge for you?
I know it already, but let's say another motherboard and with only 10 core on the CPU, so it was not really different. It's not 100% different, but the behavior is not exactly the same. So hopefully there is some guide on internet by Elmore from Asus, so you can read it and have some bases, like start with this, load the profile from someone, and you have a good basis, and you just have to improve from this.
So that helps you a lot tonight.
Yeah. Because if you have like no idea what to do, you cannot achieve a good score in 2 hours or 3 hours. It's not possible at all.
I mean, you did very great. You had the 14 core, and you had the time to try the 18 core in less than 3 hours.
Yeah.
So speaking of the 18 core, how did that turn out, the 7980XE?
It's an amazing CPU. It's so fast when you try to make a Cinebench. It's like, wow, it's 5,000 points. Yeah,
that's pure madness.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And when you think about your small CPU, like 4-core, 8-thread, and then you have this monster on your end, it's wow.
I mean, we saw scores that were quite insane tonight, and you actually had one of the best core was the 18-core CPU, which is going to be very interesting to see in the next few days what you can pull out from this one. Yeah. Buildzoid remote, do you have a question for Wizerty?
Not really. I mean,
well, thank you very much.
I'm expecting to just end up reading guides about this, and the thing is, I'm not super I can't see X299 in my near future just because it's such an expensive platform, and I kind of feel like I have enough stuff to work on already. In terms of hardware, so it's like it was a nice to see like the scores that could be done.
So you're gonna stay ultimately jealous.
What?
You will stay jealous, and that's it. We'll just live with it.
I just kind of don't care. I mean,
that's what happened. I mean, when you try to get a Czech guy living in UK on the live stream, that can happen. Buildzoid talk about the price of the CPU, which is one of the highest so far on the consumer market. We're used to that on the 6950X Broadwell eCPU that was priced quite high as well.
Yeah.
Even though the price, are you gonna get this platform and play with it?
If I get it for free, for sure. If I have to pay for it,
That's how they do it.
I'm in the same camp on that.
yeah.
If I get a free X299 chip, sure, but otherwise it's just not happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, you will pretty much, I think, get one. You might actually get one tomorrow at the OCWC Moscow event. I don't know if that's one of the perk for the thing. So you're competing in the Overclocking World Championship tomorrow as well?
Yeah, qualification was this morning.
Oh, you mean you were overclocking this morning? You overclock tonight? You overclock tomorrow as well?
Yeah.
That's madness.
Yep.
All right,
it's like non-stop overclocking.
So it's like two days out of the house and 2 days full on.
Yeah.
So how did you prepare for that?
This platform was well known by me because it's something not new. It's probably 1 year old now, so it's an old thing, you know. When you're in
for top
overclocking,
overclockers like this, like 1 year is old.
Yeah. So the preparation was already done long time ago. But this morning I had some issue with the motherboard because they start to have a lot of call bug issue and also some strange behavior when you restart. It shows 0 stop and boot 2 or 3 times. Every time you have to reset it.
I mean, you're using liquid nitrogen on the trade show, which is full of people.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can expect to run into some kind of challenges for sure.
No. I mean, the motherboard was good. I have 2 Apex, and it was really a nice motherboard. But after some hours and hours and hours on cold, they start to have some strange behavior.
Expectations. Like these guys have expectation like here, and the industry is like here, but it's like I have expectations.
Yeah. So I hope tomorrow I can have a better motherboard, let's say the same but a new one without any issue, because competing with this one will be difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so well, best of luck for you. Let's hope you can make it through to the next few brackets. If you have to say something that was impressing you the most as of tonight, what was it?
It's not something that I'm impressed. It's just some feelings that I'm so happy to be, here, because doing overclocking at home is fun, but doing overclocking with your friends, it's amazing,
You can see that smile, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Well, thank you very much, Wizerty.
Thank you.
You are #1 overclocker in France. You have your own branding. You have your own Facebook and Twitch channel, right?
Yep.
So Twitch TV, Wizerty. I guess that's
it's
Wizerty
all
everywhere.
Wizerty everywhere.
So Wizerty everywhere. You're gonna find these guys out, and you're streaming. Oh yeah, you have your name on this hoodie, which is the FFOC, so the French Federation of Overclocking as well, which is something you're involved in that as well.
Yeah. It's something we start with you also.
Actually, I'm the vice president of it, so yeah.
2 years ago, and it's only to promote overclocking in France and other country close to France. If you are from Switzerland or from Belgium, you can come with us. No problem.
No hard feeling, no worry. All right. Well, thank you very much. Before we leave the show, there was one thing that you show live that I want you to show live again to the people on the live. That was the deleting a CPU. And so, can you just open up the CPU again? So we're talking about a CPU that is like worth $2,000.
Yeah.
And so you took it and you say, oh yeah, I just want to remove that protection from it.
I build a tool to make it, but it's not here, probably on the venue, because I didn't find any tool available on the market, so I just built my own tool, and everything is on. I don't know if I can say the name.
Sure.
On Tom's Hardware. If you hit deleting CPU Wizerty, you will probably find it's a small review with a lot of picture how to make the tool, let's say. So it's from the CAD built on computer.
The CNC platform.
Yeah, but even before how I design it on computer and how I'm manufacturing with CNC and how I use it. So everything is on the review. So the CPU, I think we delete like 6 or 7 CPU tonight.
So you mean that's worth like $20,000 worth of hardware?
Yeah. Exactly. And so far all CPU are still alive. So. Let's say it's a good news,
That's madness.
And just to delete CPU, you just have to hold the PCB and the tool will push on the EHS, like this.
EHS, yeah.
And it starts moving. And when it starts moving, you have to stop really carefully and really let's
Okay,
say,
we're just talking about
accuracy.
breaking warranties right here, so...
Yeah. Because you are a lot of small components on the PCB, and if you push too much, you kill the CPU for sure. So you have to push enough, but not too much. And at the end, it's something like this. So obviously the thermal paste have been added by us. There is not that much on the stock product, you know. And some people ask me sometimes why there is so much thermal paste, and it's only for extreme overclocking. So if you are doing air cooling or water cooling, you don't need that much. Okay, so you just need to cover the die, and you will be okay. But then if you do overclocking to avoid a crack on cold, yeah, you need a lot of thermal paste.
Oh, okay, that's quite insane, and that's something. Okay, just for everyone that is watching right here on Twitch.tv OverClocking-TV channel, that's only for extreme overclockers. Like, if you have that at home, you don't need to do that, especially not on the $2,000 CPU. Just don't do it, please. Please don't do it, and don't go back to Intel that we say that oh yeah, you can do it.
No.
Well, thank you very much, Wizerty. I appreciate your time and the information you were sharing with us tonight. Guys, if you have any question for Wizerty, you can hit him up on Facebook and look for Wizerty, and I guess watch you on Twitch in the next few days. We're gonna try to get Smoke next, which is on Russian overclocker here, which is the #1 in Russia, and we're gonna tune that right after the break.
Okay, so bye guys, still a lot of work to do, so So I'm Wizerty, a French overclocker, and I overclocked on Clancy team. I work as an engineer for 7 years now. I overclocked for 4 years, maybe 5 now times. I start overclocking to have more frame on game, and then I feel it really exciting. So I start with Shiler and then go to dry ice and like in nitrogen. And now I don't spend a week without liquid nitrogen. So I think my best moment on this sport are all live events. I really like this kind of when you meet everybody and you meet new people, you see old friends, things like this. So really like live events. I don't know if it's because I reach a higher level, but it's much more complicated. When I start, you just have to buy one CPU, one graphic card, and you can enjoy it. Now you have to bin a lot of CPU, bin motherboard, bin VGA, bin everything, and spend a lot of time tweaking to be competitive with other guys. So I think the level is really high now. In 5 years overclocking, don't really know. I hope it will not be worse. I mean, with really low CPU and low VGA, we can see on some brand you cannot change voltage anymore on some graphic card, or you ask for really special V-mode. So I hope in future it will be more free. For new overclocker, an advice: have fun and do your best. Keep your motivation at high as possible, and you will be good someday.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Performance Matters event, the Multicore Madness Moscow. I'm Trouffman from OverClocking-TV, and got the chance to get Smoke from Russia here on the live. Hey, man.
Hi.
What's
Hi,
up?
everybody.
Are you tired?
So tired.
So tonight you had the chance to overclock the Intel Core i9-7980XE, which is the 18-core CPU from Intel. Did you know that CPU before tonight?
No, I just play with the CPU first time, and I was really surprised that easy to handle. So very good stability, very interesting to bench. So because in last year I was so tired from Skylake. From Kaby Lake, and this is something new in our community, something new platform for me, because I love multi-core benchmarks. So this was very interesting, and so I very love this event.
Oh, that's awesome. You said you overclock with different kind of CPUs. I guess that's the highest core CPU that you ever bench, right?
Really? Yes.
Yeah.
I benched before Threadripper, but it was so terrible, so stressful, you know.
So for the 7980XE, you managed to reach 5.8 gigahertz. Yeah. So how was your strategy to actually get to this frequency with all the 18 core and the hyperthreading activated?
So it's very easy. So first we have an undivided CPU. We just firstly we just put 1.5 voltage, then we find the call bug. We understand that CPU first we have two chips. First chips was very good because it have call bug around -122, and we test second chip. It was not so good. It was like -107. So and frequency was a little bit lower, and so we decided to delete the first chip. We deleted first chip, and we got 5.8 very quickly, around 10-15 minutes. Just only put 1.5, just put some little bit adjustment, and we get 5.8. We saw 5.9, but we cannot save it.
Okay, so you saw it, but you were not able to validate that specific score.
Yeah,
that's insane. Like 10 to 15 minutes to get from
insane.
The CPU and like, oh yeah, sure, I'm like 4.8 gigahertz. That's easy, and that's just 18 cores, no problem.
Yeah, I think this CPU is best for normal users because it's very easy to overclock. So you just adjust voltage profile for memory, and you can run. Everybody can do the same, you know.
So that's
my grandmother can do this, I think.
I want to see a video of that. All right. We had Wizerty and BenchBros just before in the interview. How do you feel like benching with these guys again? Because it's been like a good 3 years you haven't seen them for benching.
No, very good. I'm very glad to see them again after AOC, first time, second time AOC. So very sad that now we don't have AOC event. So maybe we invite them also for our OC summit in winter, but I don't know.
That's something that might happen. All right, we have Houston and Buildzoid on remotes. Do you guys have any question for Smoke, which is #1 overclocker in Russia? Okay, Buildzoid, I won't ask you. Okay.
I'm curious, what's your favorite part about the event? What's been your favorite part of the event?
My favorite part of the event that people who coming on this event, it was like very professional people, like a journalist, blogger, YouTuber, reviewer, vendor, so businessman. It's not like exhibition like Igromir, you know. It's not like an exhibition for childs who don't know nothing, you know. When we bench an exhibition, the most popular question when they saw the liquid nitrogen, they ask everybody, what is it? And so tired to answer about this question. So I want to put next time label, if you ask this question, I shoot you.
Welcome to Russia.
Yeah.
No problem. All right. Thank you very much, Smoke, for your time. I appreciate it. And that's the end of our coverage here at the Performance Matters event. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I want to give a special shout out to all the guys that made this event possible in the back end. So Peter from PJ from HWBOT, all the crew here at behind taking care of the stream as well. it's not just a few people. There's a lot of people being involved for that. All the Overclockers, Wizerty, BenchBros, you, Smoke. Thank you very much for everyone that tuned in good numbers tonight. I mean, you might end up here from the Twitch front page, and then you say like, "What the hell is this?" And you turn out that's like, "Oh yeah, there's actually something going on." It's insane to see all these people. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. If you want to have more information about what's going on in the overclocking world, don't forget to subscribe to Overclocking-TV on Facebook, YouTube, and here on Twitch. We do stream a live show that's called the OC Show every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's along with Buildzoid that was here on the live show tonight, and Atlas and Tullius from India. Thank you, Buildzoid and Houston, for being here in the live show as well tonight. Thank you very much for your input on all what's going on. And I guess that some of the guys will be still overclocking in the next few hours or maybe days with this Intel Core i9 7940X, 17960X, and 7980XE. Thank you to all the partners as well for this event that made it possible. So HWBOT, Intel, Asus ROG, Seasonic for the PSUs, and HyperX for memory and storage. Thank you very much, everyone, once again, and I can't wait to see you guys on the next show. Until next time, keep pushing it.